at 5:01 on April 3rd. I'm glad to see everyone. You notice we have some seating changes and we'll give it a whirl. I'm hoping I can see people better this way, and that's my goal. I don't have any announcements for this meeting. We do have announcements regarding how the agenda is at the village board meeting. So we will go forward with the rest of this agenda. Oh, I will note though, that because of the changes we're going to talk about at the next meeting, at the village board meeting, the minutes from committee of the whole are from now until eternity have been moved to the village board agenda for action, because we're not taking any action during committee of the whole. So if you're looking for those minutes, we will review them at the village board meeting. All right, with that, we're going to move to item 4, items for discussion. And the first one is discussion regarding village board agenda, posting requirements and possible amendment to section 1.072 of the Village of DeForest Municipal Code. And Bill Chang's going to handle that matter.
So I'm going to try my best to explain this. May need Al's help in regards to the case law here. But we recently there was a case here, or a lawsuit in regards to the process of posting closed session items and then entering and convening into closed session and then reconvening into open session and taking action. So because of the case law coming out, we have to be more stringent on how we post and how we enter into closed session. So you'll notice as part of your packet, provide some of the reasoning of the case law. I also provided an example of how we are looking to set up how we post our agendas, namely the process and procedure during a board meeting, where this also conflicts with our current ordinance. So if you look at chapter 1, I believe in section 7, we are very specific about how we take items on the agenda. It's my understanding that's always been done for convenience, not necessarily in regards to case law or the current law. And so our intention here is to have a discussion about, is the current process working for us? If not, what changes do we need to make? And then what Al and I can do after this is put together an ordinance and bring it back to you. That way we're not ad hoc writing an ordinance that we're going to have to see a lot of red lines on. Did I miss anything there? So for example, as already mentioned here, we did move, since we're making a change, we did move any action items into the village board portion. Technically, we're not supposed to be having any type of action in committee of the whole. In fact, moving forward, what I'd be recommending is that we don't even call it committee of the whole. I'd recommend that it be called like a village board work session. A committee of the whole suggests that there's a meeting of multiple committees, and I don't believe we do that or historically have done that. So just, to rid of that confusion. As we go through the agenda here, or the proposed makeup of the agenda, so we follow it for the most part going through. It remains the same as we get through announcement, consent agenda, public appearances. I'll note that under section 7, we added presentations a couple of years back. There was a question of whether or not when folks, third parties, consultants come in to present on an item, whether they should be presenting during the time of the item in old business, new business ordinances or resolutions, or if they should be presenting at the very beginning. And it was just a judgment call at that time that we would put them in as part of or following public appearances so that we can get them in and out as soon as possible. But the issue that arises is if you had a question later on in discussion we'll have to require them to stay longer. So, I don't think that there is a right or wrong way of doing it. It's a matter of preference. And then as we develop the agenda, being cognizant of, who we have here as our guests and getting to them in a proper time. So that presentations label is actually not in our ordinance. It's something that we've added to the agenda as we've gone along. We have old business, we have new business. And what we've done here is previously under current ordinance, it lists new business, resolutions, and ordinances all as separate categories. Again, a couple of years back, there was some confusion in regards to what came first, resolutions or ordinances. If you kind of look at the history, we do everything in resolutions. All of our approvals are either resolutions or ordinances. The issue that we were running into is on, say, a particular subject, a development subject, where it had multiple development agreements, CSMs, and then zoning requirements. And those are done, depending on which item it is, resolution or ordinance. And we were having to make multiple presentations on a single subject because those subjects were appearing at different times in accordance to our ordinance and how we set up that agenda. So we moved, at that time, we moved resolutions and ordinances together to make more sense of that. But we did not change the ordinance at that time to reflect that. And so we were non-compliant with our ordinance, even starting at that point. So with this case law, it furthers that issue. And as you know, our current ordinance or our current practice has us announcing closed session items at the very beginning and then automatically motioning to go into closed session at the very end, and then having all those closed session items kind of cataloged together. We can't do that anymore. And so as you can see, this last section here, new business. So what we're proposing is that we're going to go away from resolutions and ordinances as a label altogether. Most of those, when they get introduced, are all technically new business or old business anyway. And so what we have here is it provides us the flexibility simply to mix and match and make it more efficient as we are proposing those subjects to you. You'll see here, this last item, 9.8. So this is kind of where the listing change is coming in. We need to be able to post the agenda item and then post the particular reason why we're going to close session for that particular item. These are each separated. So say, for example, if we had another item that we would go into closed session, that would come as 9.10 and would be listed separately. The other portion of the case law requires that we have some discussion of that item in open session. And if it deems or requires to go into closed session, whether it's negotiation or another exception made under the closed session statute exception, then you as a board would make that motion at that time, go into closed session, discuss that particular item, would need then to come back into open session. So there could be a situation here where we're going in and out of closed session on the particular subject or the particular item. And so it's going to be on us to ensure that as we are creating the agenda, that we're making good use of closed session. Anything else?
Just one clarification. I think as I read this new case that came out, it's only the negotiating exception where we have to do it this way. there has to be some discussion about what the item is. If, for example, you were going into closed session to discuss Bill's performance review, you don't have to start talking about him in open session and then go into closed session because that whole thing belongs in closed session. One of the things that we're going to run into is the reason the agenda has been set up the way it has been is to make it more convenient for people who are here to watch the meeting. They don't have to leave and come back and then leave again and then come back, you know, because you're going to have the open part, then the closed part, then the open part, closed part. So what I think makes some sense is that we, first of all, lump those items that are going to have closed sessions toward the end of the meeting, because a lot of people will probably just decide they don't want to sit around to see you talk for 2 minutes about another item before you go into closed session. So they'd have that option anyway. And then if you want, when you get to the point of the discussion where you decide that a closed session is appropriate to talk about negotiating strategy, you table that item to later in the meeting so that you can do all of your closed sessions at the end of the meeting. In other words, you do the open session discussion. If the board decides, hey, we should go into closed session to talk about, you know, how much we're willing to offer for that property or what terms we should negotiate in this agreement, then you could table that item that you're talking about to follow the last item on the agenda and then do the closed session at the end. Again, that would be more convenient for people who don't want to sit around while you're in closed session, especially if they have to stand out in the hallway.
Al, can you clarify if we still, if there's multiple subjects in closed session, do we still have to go in and out?
Yeah, I think you still have to reconvene into open session to make the motion to go into closed session for the next item.
Rebecca?
I think you just answered my question. So there's going to be times when we're only going to have one thing that goes into close, but there's going to be times when we may have multiple where we're going to have to go into close for one, come back out, go back in, come back out. Okay.
So from management administrative coordination of closed session, we've thought about this and, you know, we'll have to likely, again, try our best to limit our closed session items to 1 per meeting or 2 and make use of that work session, right? So we can, go into closed session on the work session, but we can't take any action on it. So again, we have to be more cognizant about how we set our schedules up and if there are multiple negotiations, how does that get presented over time? What is technically being negotiated versus what can be released in open session, and then coordinating so that we're not giving away too much in open session here as we go along. So it is a different way of doing business.
So what are they trying to accomplish with this?
Transparency. This is a Court of Appeals decision. This isn't a legislature changing the law. They came up with a fairly unique interpretation of the statute, I think, to reach this conclusion. The open meetings law requires that every meeting be convened in open session and then moved into closed session at an appropriate time. The court seems to have interpreted that to mean every agenda item has to be started in open session, whereas the law just says the meeting has to be started in open session. So the particular case they were deciding, we've got a saying in the law that bad cases make bad law. And I think this is an example of that. The case was decided the right way, but they then threw in this new twist and criticized yet one more aspect of how this particular municipality had handled their item. So it's their interpretation and we're bound by it until somebody changes it.
Is it likely to, I see you. Just one second. Is it likely to be challenged?
In my opinion, it's not, because I think they're going to lose anyway. I actually have some history with this particular case. Not that I was advising the municipality, but I was tangentially involved in it and I was aware of it. The reasons they went into closed session were not appropriate to begin with, at least for one of the two meetings that the case dealt with. So I think they're probably going to lose on that basis alone. So the rest, their incentive to appeal is probably not that great.
Rebecca?
Just one follow-up question. With the fact that we'll be starting discussions on these items that typically we've only discussed and closed, is there some kind of guidance that you guys can write up, provide us so that we know what we should and should not be speaking about in open? So that during those types of discussions,
Yeah, well, and so for our memorandums, which will be important in these situations, we'll spell out the summary of the negotiation. If there are items remaining to be negotiated, we'll spell that out in our memorandum. So it's important that you read those moving forward.
Other questions? And we'll have Bill and Al to guide us through this, and we'll get there. We'll have to be patient and tolerant. I know that audience members or residents visiting the meeting, and frankly, Callie and Brandy will have some struggles because getting in and out of closed takes some time. So, and at some point, our residents are going to wonder, what is going on? So.
It just, it's going to be inconvenient for DeForest residents who come to the meetings, but I can tell you, I've got clients where if they go into closed session, the people actually have to leave the entire building and stand outside, which is not comfortable in the wintertime. So I think if you had several closed sessions down there, you'd have a much bigger problem.
Yes, Jim.
Well, something I just thought of, if we're going in and out of close, do we necessarily have to go in and out of having the camera running and stuff? To me, we could probably come back in the open and just do it with notes, not necessarily video and everything. Is that correct? If we want to be more efficient that way?
If you're using Zoom as a method of participating in a meeting or observing a meeting, you're going to have the motion to go into closed session each time in open session with the Zoom camera on.
Okay.
Other questions? This is going to take some getting used to.
So as it pertains to the ordinance itself, this is the section that we're talking about here. It's actually section 2 or 107.2 is the order of business. And again, we'd like to get your direction, your comment in regards to any of the changes for the order of business that we should be paying attention to as we draft this ordinance to come before you in the future here.
So this is the old one as it exists now.
That's correct.
Okay.
If you do think of something, please email that to me, and we can insert that as we draft the ordinance. Thank you.
All right. All right. If there's nothing else on that, we'll all absorb it as we sit here and move forward. The next item is update and discussion regarding 2025 special events and recreational programs. Yay, Reese.
All right. So I put together a presentation and I believe, I don't know, maybe it was last year when we were talking about hiring Trish's position, I said that I would come back to the board and give a presentation kind of all the different things that it takes going into events and just, making sure that the Recreation and Community Enrichment Department is running smoothly, and now is never better a time than to show all the things that we're doing. So just as a reminder, the things that the department is in charge of. So we're in charge of all the recreation programs. I tried to categorize them as best as I could. So adult fitness, adult enrichment. Enrichment normally means arts, or you're learning something. It's less sports or fitness. Adult leagues, educational workshops, one-day wonders, which are one-day classes that we have for youth. Typically, they're art classes, but sometimes they can be other programs as well. Sports camps, youth sports. And then we manage the athletic complex. So we do the field and tournament scheduling, volunteer coordinating, concession stand operations, staff training expectation meetings. And then right now we're in the throes of getting everything started up for the year. Continuing on to the things that our department is in charge of, we do special events. So these are all the special events for 2025 that we have on the docket for this year. We also manage the sponsorship for special events, leagues, and the athletic complex. We take park rental requests and changes. We manage the community garden, and then we also manage the summer discount ticket program. For recreation programs, things that we've been doing so far this year. So we've already ran 48 programs. For each one of those programs, we're sending out rosters and attendance sheets to instructors, making sure that facilities are reserved. If we have late ads, adding those late participants, updating those forms. So far this year, we have 208 programs that are scheduled. That's through August. Are those programs. So we'll have another guide coming out at the end of July that will have additional programs for fall and winter. We constantly are having to monitor those registration numbers and communicate with instructors about where numbers are, if classes are going to happen, if they're not going to happen, if we need to make changes, send out more reminders for registration. We do coach recruitment. So I gave an example. So for U8 soccer, when registration closed, we had coaches for 2 teams. We have 14 teams worth of players. We did end up getting enough to have 12 teams. So we have a little bit larger this year, but that's Sam cold calling parents that he knows from the community to say, like, please help us. Also sending like daily emails. They definitely, people know us from the amount of emails they probably get from us. So it's coach recruitment, and then we use a program called Mojo, which is an app that all the teams are imported into, and coaches have that so they can communicate with their teams. There's also guides on drills that you can run during practices. You can make practice plans. You can communicate if practice has to get canceled, change practices. All the game schedule is on there. So it's been a really helpful tool that we can share with coaches of saying, like, hey, if you're not really totally aware of, like, you're nervous about coaching for the first time, like, this is a tool for you to be able to go to. And it shows videos and instructions of how to do all of the drills so that we hopefully don't have any like teams where it's like, those kids don't even know what soccer is, and that's really bad. So it's really been great. We have 147 coaches so far this year that we have gotten for the 3 different sports that we have going on. We do background checks and code of conducts for all of the coaches. We create the league schedules in-house for all of the programs. We run coaches meetings for all the programs. Normally we do those virtually so that we can record them and send them out to all the coaches after. And then we book practices for all of those. And then we have to order shirts both for the participants and all of the coaches, and then get equipment bags together. And then we started doing open gyms. So we send out weekly reminders to open gym participants to make sure they know the time, the location, where they're going. We also send reminders on weeks that they're off, that there's no open gym. And if there's weather cancellations, we notify them of that. And then we have volunteers that help us with all those open gyms. And so we send emails to them with the rosters and the attendance sheets to make sure we're getting people to sign in and everyone has their liability release done. Right now, we have 50 instructors and referees that are employed with the Village of DeForest. So communicating with all of them and making sure that we're keeping up to date with what the expectations are. For all of our programs, we've done 1,280 different bookings. So those are individual. I mean, some of those, you know, when we have a session, it's 8 sessions. So we're booking that at one time. I'm not going in and booking each one individually because I don't hate myself. Some of the different, sorry, some of the different facilities that we use is the Cornerstone Community Center. Gosh, I can't look at Brandy. The school district, village properties, so we use parks, Village Hall, we sometimes use this room for a couple programs. We use Fireman's Park Community Room. And then we have some alternative spaces that I wouldn't say we use on a regular basis, but we have them kind of in our back pocket as something to help us if we're kind of in a crunch. So the library will use periodically, Pin Seekers, Roadside Grilled, and then Rude's Lanes. Seasonally, this was actually something interesting when Brandy, as I call her, Brandy with a Y, got hired. She pulled up some data to show like what our variance is in employment between summer and winter. And we have about a 60 employee difference sometimes between summer and winter. So it just really shows like as we start getting into spring and summer, like we really ramp up with every single thing that we're doing. And then in winter, it kind of slows down a little bit where there's not as much, but still quite busy. So it was, I thought that was really fascinating. So we're definitely getting into the point where we're starting to get at the peak of our employment. So we're in the process of hiring a lot of positions. We're looking to hire a tennis coordinator, tennis assistants, dance assistants, fitness instructors, referees and umpires, because and that's a hard commodity to fill. Not a lot of people want to do that when you're getting berated by people who come to even youth sporting games. So, and then we participate in a program that Pizza Hut offers where we get sponsorship or sportsmanship awards, and that every kid that does a youth sport program with us gets a token and they get a free personalized pizza for the program. So we make sure that that's included with all of the coaches' equipment bag, so players have that for the year. So we get, like I think I put on there, so 1,600 is how many we estimated we got for this year. And then we do the 2 Dick's Sporting Good discount days. So we have one that our first one for the year is coming up May 2nd through the 5th. And then we'll do another one in fall. We try to coordinate those around when like bigger sports seasons are happening. So we know baseball and softball is coming up and soccer. So we want to give those opportunities for people to get discounted equipment. And then new this year, we decided to do a re-gear equipment swap event. So we're going to allow people from the community to be able to bring in maybe soccer cleats or shin guards or footballs that their kids have maybe grown out of, but they're still in good shape, and they can get a voucher. And we'll hold the event where people can purchase those items for discounted or use a voucher to get different items. So hopefully it's kind of a way to recirculate some great items that have just been collecting dust in people's houses. And we purposely did it the week before the discount day as well, so that if they couldn't find what they were looking for there, they could at least get a coupon to go to the discount day the week later. So Monona just did this actually a couple weeks ago, and it went really great. So we talked with them on the phone for a while and got some notes and are excited to launch that this year. Now that we're through programming, we get into the athletic complex. So the things that we do with the athletic complex is we coordinate all of the field scheduling. I know you heard me talk all about that with the sanction organization. So we coordinate with the high school sanction organizations and general users. And then we work with the tournament group. So as our first tournament's coming up that same weekend, April 26th and 27th, we work with those tournament groups to make sure we get their final schedules, find out what their field setup needs are gonna be, make sure that we can coordinate that. And then we share with them our on-call schedule and employee contact list that we create for them so they can see how long our concessions are gonna be open, who those contacts are, who are groundskeepers that are gonna be on schedule. And then between Judd, Greg, Sam, and myself, we create a rotating on-call schedule for the whole summer so that if they have needs for lights or they have questions about fields, they get a number for us to be able to contact us on those weekends as well. Then we schedule all the lights and make sure the pathway light's on and, like I said, create that on-call schedule. Then we go into the concession side of things. So we go through and every year annually we review and update our employee training and expectation documents. So this Sunday we're having our concession employees expectation meeting where we go through all of the expectations we have for them. We have them sign off on the expectations. We go through how to do their timesheets, we work with a scheduling software called When I Work. We go through that process. And then this year we're adding in some training on how to deal with difficult customers and how to de-escalate situations. And so that's just kind of something that we're adding into it. And then we talk to them about making sure that they're getting their employee apparel order in and stuff like that. And then they also do an on-site training at the concession stand once water gets turned on, where they go over all of the machines, how they work, how they operate, how to use our point of sale machines, and give an opportunity to really go through that before tournaments start. It's always a little hairy as it gets right now because we don't know necessarily tomorrow it could be 70, the next day it's 32. So when can we get water on to make sure that we can actually set up these trainings? So we're really lucky that Greg and Judd and their team are really great about communicating with us and trying to get us as much notice as possible so that we can get these trainings starting. But it's making sure all the fridges are clean, they're plugged in, the water's back on, the cappuccino machines operating again, the coffee machines hooked up. We get ordering done, we get that all put away. So there's just so many different things that go into right now that add a lot into making sure that it's run successfully. And then typically in the June time, we'll have Dane County Public Health come out and do an inspection of the facility. We go through everything and make sure that we're up to code as we always have been. Then as the tournament weekends come up, we make the volunteer schedules, we confirm expectations with them. After that, we calculate the profit shares. We make bi-weekly employee schedules that go into that When I Work. We have to reactivate the point of sale machines, we reactivate the employee scheduling site. We have to move equipment because it's very cold out there. So we bring all the equipment here so that it's in a stable condition and then move it back out when the concessions are able to handle it. We get starting cash because we pull that out at the beginning of the year and then we deposit it all back at the end of the year. We coordinate with the parks crew, clean the concession, and then we have to do all of the ordering. So who does a lot of this is this guy right here, Sam. He's really great. So he's been with us since 2022. He oversees adult sports, the athletic complex concessions, scheduling the volunteer groups, field scheduling, apparel ordering. So I'm sure you have all received emails from him if we're doing an apparel order. And then he backs up all of the other recreation programs. And then since Sam has been here, he's brought a lot of new programs. So he brought the K-6 basketball, 5th and 6th volleyball, and the horse experience program as well. And then besides what he does keeping busy here, he is the Region 3 representative for our state association. And he's also on the Emerging Professionals Committee and is on the Madison College Fitness and Recreation Advisory Board. Now we get into special events. So I feel like I remember there being the question is, is there a lot that goes into, putting on special events? And there is. I can tell you Tricia has been extremely busy. So she has reviewed 149 artist applications. So each application that comes in, she reviews and then has to make the decision of whether or not it's appropriate. So 133 were approved, and then we have to manually invoice all of those people. So then we invoice them. 14 artist applications were denied. 4 had to refund due to personal reasons that they could no longer be a part of the event. And then she does event marketing. She works with Stacy, but she creates marketing pieces and social media. And then she has been working on finding new ways to do marketing outreach with asking to have our event put on Destination Madison, Wisconsin Public Radio, Discover Wisconsin, Travel Wisconsin. She even worked with one of the TV stations and talked about how we can get additional ads there and trade for some sponsorship. And so we'll have some ads that will be going out for the DeForest Dragon Art Fair there as well. And then we had to create all new vendor applications. That's something that when you're taking on a new event, we use that. And I know we kind of mirrored pretty closely to what they've done in the past. And I think she has shared with me that she wants to make some more tweaks for the future, but we just kind of wanted to get it underneath our belt for 1 year and not make too many changes so that it was comfortable for everyone. But then she's in the process of trying to recruit 36 volunteer spots. She's booking entertainment for it. I know she was working on booking a face painter today. She's booking a demonstration that's going to happen there. We book security for the event, and then we rent portable restrooms. So that's just for one. Then we get into 4th of July and all of the contracts that she's also managing at this same point too. So contracts for the bands, audio system, fireworks, ponies, beverages, tents, bounce houses, food vendors, more portable restrooms, fencing, security, marketing for that, creating applications both for the vendors there and parade, volunteer recruitment, making sure that we have all the appropriate event permits, and then meeting with those key stakeholders, so police, fire, Arts Electric, Cornerstone, who does bingo, the Freedom Run, which is ran by Joe Parker at the school, and then the car show, and then coordinating the parade, creating a site map for everything, and then figuring out the logistics of us taking over the beer tent. And then outside of all of those things, there's all the other events that she's also still managing. So the farmers market, updating vendor forms, social media management, vendor communication, and looking to solicit new vendors. I mean, we get feedback from the public on our farmers market, and the things that sometimes we hear is why isn't there more produce? And so Tricia goes out and she talks to other farmers markets and try to see how she can find additional vendors. So I know right now, I think we're going to have one additional produce vendor for this year. I think we're going to have a second egg vendor. So she's really proactive about talking to other people and getting, hearing what the public is saying and getting those things included in the event. And then within the farmers market, we also look to do some special event days. So like last year we did that Veterans Day and the Dog Day, and I think we did like a Kids Day. So trying to still plan some of those things that we work with sponsors on, but then also we still just want that because we know that all of those things, every time we run those events, it brings more people to the farmers market, which hopefully means more shoppers and makes everyone happy. And then this year she's launching Cars and Coffee. That's going to be in front of the library on 4 different Sundays. And so, it's a fun new event that she's doing. I can't tell you, I have a ton of information. I know she's told me, but I can't remember all of it right now. But event planning for that, working with Rebecca Detailing, branding and promotion, logo design. So that was the logo that they designed for the events. I know that we have some pretty excited people for that new event. And then doing more marketing and social media for the summer series. We have to do movie licensing for all of the movies that we select to show. So we make sure that we secure movie licenses for all of them. And then we negotiate band contracts with all of the bands that we hire. So it's negotiating all of those, booking food carts, coordinating beverage ordering, staffing, social media, and then permits for closing the streets down for the different events if needed. Then sponsorship is another part of what her position does in all of those events. We try to make sure that they're running on the sponsorship dollars that we're bringing in. And so we had to do a big revamp to the sponsorship guide this year, obviously with us taking over 4th of July and the Dragon Arts Fair and us adding a couple other new events. And so that was a big project that Stacy and Trisha worked on. And then sponsorship outreach. This is something that I think Trisha has really done a phenomenal job on. So she's reached out to 120 plus contacts so far this year. And she's making a big point of trying to make sure that she's having in-person meetings with these people and going out and just making a face and making those connections, because I think that's a huge part of building those relationships. So far she's secured $33,650 for event sponsorship, $3,350 for farmers market, and $3,900 for league sponsorship. Last year, I think league sponsorship was $1,200, so that is going really well. With us taking over some of these events, I mean, we have lost some sponsors that the groups have had in the past, just from us kind of taking it over, and we know that. But again, I think Trisha is really making that extra effort to make new contacts and new connections to build some additional sponsorship to meet the goals. And then also doing the athletic complex sponsorship. So far, I mean, you'll see we have another one tonight of an outfield ad sign for the athletic complex. So far, that's what we have in the outfield advertising sign. And once we get a sponsorship, you know, it's still, there's a lot of work to do. It's making the signs, coordinating that, making sure they're getting put up. And for all the events that we're fulfilling everything that we had put in our sponsorship guide. So this is Trisha. She was hired last year and is amazing. So I can't say enough good things about her. I'm so blessed to have a great team that really helps me and our department do such a good job. So she's grown our events. So last year we had 13 events and this year we're gonna have over 24. So it shows what one person can do and what an amazing person can do in a short amount of time. And she says, I'm not done yet. Outside of the events and programs and everything, so like I said, we also help with park rentals. So we do have to do some in-house park rentals for nonprofit rentals in school districts. And then periodically I give a tour of Fireman's Park Community Room because people just want to see what it looks like prior to their rental. So I schedule a time to meet with them and go over there. And so far this year, we have 198 park rentals throughout the community. So we've had 20 completed and so 178 left yet this year. So that will keep the parks guys quite busy and it'll keep us and the front desk busy too because they help process all of the security deposits and hand out the keys and everything. And then we also have the community garden, so 32 conventional plots, 24 organic, and 1 raised bed. I know I've talked with you all about the number of plots that we've added to the garden, and we have a wait list again this year. So it's been very popular. I think we might look to add after this year. I just didn't want to do it too quickly where then we would be left with empty plots. So I think just doing it gradually is kind of the smart decision, but we make plot maps, assign keys. The guys then make sure that the garden is tilled so that we can let gardeners know when they can start planting. And then in 2023, we started a digital messaging board. So any of the gardeners can send me a message, and I created a custom email, then it sends to all the gardeners so that if they need help with watering or weeding for a period of time, they can communicate with the other gardeners. We also do a summer discount ticket program. So in 2024, we sold 938 tickets. This year we've ordered 1,300, and we base that off of the numbers that we sell. I try to always buffer it because we have to order them in groups of 25. So I always try to buffer it by 25 because I know last year we ran out of tickets and it got to a point where it just didn't make sense for us to order more. And then this year too, we're moving all of the ticket sales. So we used to do all the ticket sale by hand. And we're moving that into Civic Rec so that it can be tracked, and then it will actually track what our cost recovery is on all of those tickets too, which will be a nice report. That's a program through the Wisconsin Parks and Recreation Association. Tickets are good Memorial Day through Labor Day. And then this is me. So I've been here for over 7 years. You know me, you've heard me talk. I've got a great staff. I am on the WPRA Foundation Board, and I also am on the Madison College Fitness and Recreation Advisory Board. That was everything. Any questions? I talked a lot. I had to go quick.
Well, you did a good job.
Yeah.
We have some hands up, so Jan and then Rebecca.
Reese, this is all really impressive, and we're lucky to have you and your staff.
Thank you.
But I was wondering, what are some of the denial reasons for the applications at the Dragon Arts Fair?
So some of them where they, if they were more crafty and it didn't really fit with what we were looking for the Dragon Arts Fair, those would be one of the reasons. So then we're actually starting a night market this year as well. And so we offered those vendors to come to the night market instead of being at the Dragon Arts Fair, because what we had kind of heard is some of the artists sometimes get upset if there's too crafty of items at the market or at
Okay,
the event.
I get it.
Yeah.
Thank you. And then also, do you know, is Heike still helping out Tricia this year? Like, is she going to be there by her side for the 4th of July event?
She will not, but certainly is there to help answer questions if we need as we're planning. But the chamber has stepped away. They are not able to operate the beer tent this year. And so we are working on with another group to see if they would operate it.
Okay, great, thanks.
Yeah, this was really impressive. Just one question. It was going back to the different programs and stuff, and you said something about the background checks. I'm just wanting to make sure how often. So say we have somebody who comes and is a coach or whatever, several years. Do we do that every year, or do we do it once and then don't go back and do it again? In other words, how often do we do that? Do we renew them?
Every 2 years is what we
Okay.
renew it. So the code of conduct is required every year. The background checks we do every 2 years. If we, hear the gossip in the community, it would maybe prompt us to do
Okay.
a background check earlier than that, but
I just wanted to make sure it wasn't just done once and then
oh, no,
done
no,
again.
not a one and done.
Okay, thank you.
Jim?
Thank you, and I'll echo everybody's sentiment. You guys are doing a great job. One thing that I was wanting to question, you talked about we lost some sponsors. Guess I'm most curious about past municipal sponsors. Did we lose any of those?
Sure did. Yep. So the Village of Windsor decided to no longer sponsor the 4th of July festival.
I'm assuming we had municipalities besides them too?
They were the only one that I know of.
Okay. And the
Other
other
than us,
thing
I
that
guess.
you brought up a curiosity, you said we're starting a night market, and I know there was a group that started a market, I don't know, last year or the year before, and they've been pretty active and growing. If we've been able to incorporate them with the night market, or do you know what I'm talking about on Main Street?
No, I don't know what you're talking about.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, this is something we're doing it for 2 nights, and they're going to be a part of established events that we actually already have in the park. So some of the summer series. Trisha announced this 48 hours ago. We've already gotten 11 applications and over 1,000 people interested on Facebook for it.
Okay.
That's pretty good.
I think it's a big demand because I know this other group, they've already outgrown their area for their craft fair or whatever you want to call it. So it's great.
Where is that?
By the professional building.
Do you know what night is it on?
They do it once a month. I'd have to ask them. I was looking on, it's on Facebook, but I can't find it right now.
Interesting. Okay. Anything else? Okay. One of the things I note is that Tricia's very, very busy. Do other staff, other than you and Stacy and Sam, help out, or, I mean,
Yes.
this takes a lot.
Yeah, so I didn't do a good job of saying what I do. I don't just sit in my office, but I do help Trisha and Sam, and I'm in charge of all of the enrichment programs, adult fitness, summer discount program, community garden, and the park rental. But like, you know, when we have events coming up, like I'm there helping with Trisha, and we do have some staff that help in like the concession stand and stuff like that, so.
Good,
Yeah.
good. All right. Any other questions? This was very helpful. We've all have questions, and we know where to find you if we have more. So thank you for taking a time to share with us. All right, moving on. We'll go into department updates. We have an administrative update, Bill?
Yeah, so just quickly to follow up on Reese and her presentation and your comments. As you see, there's more and more demand for our services. And as we kind of build upon the social fabric of the community, these are the type of things that our residents are asking for, right? And so, like Reese had mentioned, you know, as soon as we put the marketing up on Facebook or engaged, we're getting those comments and those thumbs up. So I just want to keep that in mind. It's not only in her department or in special events, it's across all of the programming that she has. It's across all departments that we have. And so as we kind of gear up to talk about budget, you know, we're going to have these presentations come again before you about what's going on in each of the departments. Talking about kind of the next couple meetings here, it's that time again where we start talking about or reviewing the strategic plan and our objectives, and going into that discussion of, you know, what does our annual training look like this year? You know, I think I have it scheduled for our next meeting to really start talking about how does that, what is it that we're interested in learning about? I have some comments from surveys from last time around. And so this is really your training and your ability to, or opportunity to really team build and really then come together. And this really then sets us up for the beginning of our discussions on budget and budget session, and, you know, as we go through that process. And so it's my favorite time of year.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, finance, Carol?
Before Bill tries to jump you right into the next budget, I will share that the audit team has been working over the last 2 weeks with our 3 different teams of auditors, trying to finish up 2024 before he tries to jump right into 2026. So yes, we've been working on the village, the CDA, and the utility audit, getting through the field work. So field work is done at this point, and then auditors will take their information and start preparing financials. So I expect you'll see those in June, like usual.
Great, thank you. Chief Olson's not online, is he? No. Public services update, Judd?
Chief Olson's got police commission meeting tonight occurring, so. Just a couple things. The e-waste event is this weekend, the first one for the spring, the Saturday, and it's also coincides with opening of our yard waste facility. So that will be back open for residents to bring in their waste, as well as then e-waste stuff. Again, you have to be a resident of the village of DeForest to participate in that. Resurfacing projects starting April 14th, weather pending. We'll start probably in the industrial area that we had first with Stevenson, and I can't think of the name of the road. Burton, thank you. So that way they're done with that before the Highway V project gets done. And the Highway V project will have bids back here in another week or so, I think it is. Cake Parkway is also scheduled to start about April 14th. We had our kickoff pre-construction meeting with those folks today. And then the new desks will be here the week of the 21st of April, have them installed. So we're going to avoid doing the, is it CDA? P&Z meeting, so we don't interrupt them. So we'll probably do it Wednesday, Thursday, Friday after that. So questions?
All right, thank you. Alex, community development update?
Couple updates. So first and foremost, I think I had mentioned back late 2024 that the CDA was applying for a grant through WEDC for small business development. We did receive an award. We'll be partnering with the Village of Windsor CDA. We did get a max award of $250,000. So we'll be working through that and putting a program together to support small businesses in both communities. I'll keep you guys posted as we kind of move through what that program looks like. I did have the opportunity last week to attend WEDA, WEDA, Wisconsin Economic Development Association's legislative day at the Capitol, where they basically put together an opportunity to go talk with legislature about different economic development priorities. They also shared what their priorities are going to be in this legislative session and some items that'll be coming through for them. There'll be some TIF reform and then some business development tax credit improvements, housing tax credit improvements, and then some trailer legislation on some of the workforce housing revolving loan funds that were put out in 2023, I believe. And then the last update that I have here is we're moving to a system. I'll kick it over to Brandy to talk a little bit more about this for code enforcement, where we've created these very bright pink door hangers to talk a little bit about the different code violations and hopefully give a little bit more of an educational component to some of that. Brandy, you want to kind of talk about that?
Yeah, so just really quick, I came up with the idea to maybe do door hangers because the way our process works is we have a code violation. We have to go out, verify the code violation, come back, mail a letter. They have 7 days. They don't do anything. They have another 7 days, 14 days. Or if we're working with them on something, we may give them an extension, things like that. A lot of residents aren't aware that there are rules that they have to follow. And I like to read ordinance, but most people don't. So one of the ideas was, as we're out in the community and I'm kind of driving around and things, is rather than delaying some of the time that it takes to contact the residents, of having these they're kind of generic door hangers with the majority of your standard violations, trailer in the grass or junk vehicle or something. And so I just check it off and hang it on their door. It's got my contact information on the bottom, but it's more, like Alex said, an educational piece for us to do kind of a soft outreach before they start getting the letters from the village, because people get very upset when they get, letters saying that they aren't, complying with the ordinances and stuff. So we figured this is a nice step, education. It's a soft outreach. Maybe it'll make more people aware of what can and can't be done before we start doing any really hard, mailings. So that's the idea behind that.
Yeah, we've been doing some tracking activities on our code enforcement process just to get a better understanding of what that looks like. And I'll likely give you guys an update on that via email, but this is an effort to just sort of help streamline some of that.
Thank you. All right. Callie, administrative update?
So we had an election on Tuesday. I'm not sure if you knew. We had an amazing turnout for a spring election. There was a 65% turnout in the village between both locations. We did have a total of 5,347 voters. 2,110 of those were absentees. I was just kind of shocked, and I'll share with you. I was looking at the numbers. a lot of my election workers were saying it just feels worse than the presidential, like it's so much busier than the presidential. And they were correct. We did have more in-person voters during the spring election than we did at the presidential in November. So it was very busy all day at both locations. The total number was 5,347.
Wow. All right, thank you. And hopefully you'll get some time off now. All right. Reese, do you have anything else? No, you're good. All right. Thank you. Well, if there's no other business that come before this body, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn the committee of the whole meeting.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We'll adjourn, but we'll reconvene in 5 minutes to start our board meeting. On Thursday, April 3rd, 2025. I would ask Callie to note roll call, and I would ask Jim to lead us in the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Announcements. We have some changes to our agenda. We talked about this in committee of the whole meeting. These are changes that were driven by case law that has recently come out. And so we're going to ask Bill to lead us through those, but you will notice the way we have organized the agenda is a reflection of that case law.
Yeah, just quickly, so it's reflected in this agenda and before you this evening. You'll notice that the normal way that we enter into closed session discussion has been amended in this agenda. As we get to item 9.1, or excuse me, 9.8, where there's a possibility of discussion of closed session, it is noted under that specific agenda item. So again, I'll provide more direction when we get to that item, but that's the notice at this time.
Thank you, Bill. We have a consent agenda, and I would entertain a motion to approve it unless somebody wants something separated out.
Motion approved.
We have a second?
Second.
Can I, sorry, I wanted to pull out 5.2.2.
Okay, are the people who made the motion and the second willing, don't need to? Okay, all right, let's do it. All right, so let's approve the rest of it then. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. On 5.2.2, Resolution 2025-035, a resolution providing a second extension to the recording deadline for the homestead addition to Savannah Brooks. Do you want us to run through a presentation?
Nope, the one question I had is that it was changed from, I think it was April 3rd out to April 18th. And I was just a little bit concerned at how short a duration that extension was, as if, guess I was maybe suggesting maybe like a May 2nd, so we could have a meeting in there in case something happened or.
Yeah, so the items are being prepared right now. We're waiting for signatures from the Department of Administration. We're currently in process of getting signatures done for the development agreement and the plat from the village side. So it's all currently under process. They were just worried that they weren't able to get it done by tomorrow and recorded by tomorrow. And so we're confident that this will get done before the next village board meeting.
Okay, That's, I guess, the clarification I needed. Thank you.
Okay. So I would entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
A motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Unless there's any further discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay. Item 6, public appearances. All right. Make sure I got all of our forms. And Callie, I would ask, do you know, is there anyone on Zoom?
I have not received any forms from anybody on Zoom wishing to speak.
Okay, all right. With that, then we will start with John, and I apologize if I get your name wrong, Schmidtneck? All right, please come forward to the table, and you'll need to turn on your mic and give us your name and address for the record. You have to speak pretty close.
Check.
Yep, very good.
Hi, my name is John Schmidtnick. I reside at 717 West Mohawk Trail. I own a home on Mohawk Trail with my wife Lynn. We've been village residents for over 20 years. I'm not an activist. I'm not a lobbyist. I'm here representing, or not here representing any group or any outside interests. I'm here tonight as a village resident regarding the recent removal of water fluoridation in the public water supply. My wife and I have raised 4 children. We have 7 grandsons. 2 of them are seniors at the Forest. We have 2 more at Harvest Middle School. All of us through our entire life have had access to fluoridated water. It was quite a shock when I received the notification from the village announcing the change. The letter mentions this decision was made after careful consideration of community feedback, regulatory guidelines, and long-term impacts on the water infrastructure. It also mentioned call the Village Waterworks if you need additional info or had questions. I called and left a message. That message was never returned. I assume it's because there were so many calls made that it was impossible to return them all. That's all I can assume. Trying to figure out what I was missing, I decided to do some research on my own. I discovered over 72% of the US population that is serviced with community water systems receives fluoridated water. When looking at our neighboring states, Minnesota is number 3 in the United States at 98.9%. Illinois is number 4 at 98.2. Michigan is number 13 at 90.6. Iowa is number 16 at 88.8, and Wisconsin is number 20 at 84.6. Fluoridated water has been around since the mid-1940s. The CDC has named water fluoridation one of the 10 greatest public health achievements of the 20th century. I surveyed the medical community. Doctors, dentists, hygienists, everyone I spoke with had the same response. Water fluoridation is most certainly a benefit for oral health. The dentists were adamant about young children being at much greater risk for tooth decay. A CDC study has shown 2/3 of 3rd grade students experience tooth decay in non-fluoridated communities. That risk is higher among low socioeconomic status citizens that may not have the means to add fluoride outside of the community water system. Minorities and the poor have higher rates of decayed or missing teeth. In good conscience, how can we knowingly take this group of people and subject them to higher risk? Mental health and the quality of life are very much in play with this issue. It's one of the most
Excuse me,
preventable
John.
diseases.
Excuse me,
Doesn't make
John.
sense to me,
Your 3-minute time for public appearances expired.
right? As a grandparent, concerned citizen, I ask that you reconsider your decision.
If you have your remarks typed up and you want to submit them for the record, you can give those to Callie. Thank you, John. Ryan Gillingham?
Good evening, everybody. I live in Windsor, 6845 Sunset Meadow.
I'm sorry, could you state your name and address for me?
Sure.
Thank you.
Ryan Gillingham, 6845 Sunset Meadow Drive, Windsor, Wisconsin.
Thank you.
Came to my attention, there was a meeting that had some hostilities and there was a change submitted by one of the trustees about speaking at the meetings. And according to Wisconsin legislator, statute 19.84, town board meeting and preliminary parliamentary procedure ordinance states that anybody speaking during the public term, during the public appearances is allowed to speak for their time limit with protection from First Amendment, whether that be criticizing or adding input or value. And I feel this is important because the Village of DeForest and Windsor share many services together. We have residents with dual addresses where they have a Windsor address serviced by DeForest Utilities and vice versa. And to not allow those citizens to speak during these appearances would hinder everybody's decisions and their skills. So I feel that moving forward, we should take everybody's input when possible, as long as it's following the order and decorum rules for a board meeting. And to prevent future incidences, I think maybe publications on these should be available to people that need help with that. Because some people have not been to a board meeting, have not served on a committee, have not been involved, but when they get an incident where they're caught off guard, they feel their power is taken, so they don't have a say in what they're doing. So if we empower these people with the information that they need to speak properly and cordially, more things will be accomplished for both communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. Shannon Murphy?
No? Okay. Quick question. This is the first time I've ever spoken in front of a board. So I honestly have a question of why I would need to provide my address.
It's for the record so that we know who has spoken, and it's just an identifier.
Okay. It's unfortunate because these are provided to the public on YouTube, and these meetings have been posted on social media for the use of doxing people, so I just don't feel very safe
Okay.
providing my
Well,
address.
give us your name.
Shannon Murphy? Okay, all right, wonderful, thank you. So I'm opposed to the change that Bill Landgraf is seeking to make to village board meetings. Removing the voices of thousands of people in neighboring communities only serves to divide us even more, especially at a time where relationships are already fragile. Voting yes for this could mean people who operate businesses in DeForest but do not own property no longer have a voice. Businesses coming to DeForest that could increase visitors, have possible safety concerns, and increase shared road usage. Neighboring communities no longer be able to openly and on the record voice their concerns or ask questions. A couple examples may be Buc-ee's, a casino. Heck, maybe you want a strip club, but we would no longer be able to talk about it. Without the workforce, what about the workforce of DeForest? The people who make DeForest thrive but don't reside here. For example, our district teachers and staff. The many large-scale plants around DeForest and their workforce, they also will be silenced. I found the core values posted on the village board website that each member should be following. Here are a few that stuck out to me. Recognize the different ways everyone contributes to the conversation and ensure all voices are heard. Own your mistakes. Actively call attention to issues or potential issues rather than trying to hide them. Trust must exist for success to be achieved. Be inclusive. Everyone has a voice and a valued opinion. Put ethics and equity at the forefront of everything that you do. One most of all stood out, so I will read it in its entirety. Have the hard conversations. Not every conversation will be easy. Say what needs to be said, but do so with respect and kindness. Be transparent on what you need and why. Bring your ideas to the table without fear of embarrassment. Shift your perspective on feedback. Actively seek it out, both positive and constructive, from your team and residents, and receive it with gratitude and grace. I believe closing off thousands of people from being able to be on record in an open forum goes against the core values that this board themselves have agreed to uphold. I do have a question for each one of you on the board. What will this change actually accomplish for this village and its community surrounding? Thank you.
Thank you, Shannon. Vicki Heimbecker? Judd's having a night over there.
Vicki Heimbecker, 309 Riverwood Bend, DeForest. I too am here to oppose the proposed legislation for limiting who can speak at these board meetings. I have discussed this with a couple of friends, happen to be from the Windsor area as well, and we share some of the same concerns. But if this is passed, the following may happen. And I also think I'm kind of echoing what Shannon is saying. A Windsor resident who is serviced with the DeForest water cannot speak on changes to their water services, such as removing fluoride. Someone without US citizenship who rents in DeForest would not be able to speak on any topic that would affect them. Windsor or Vienna residents could not speak about business being brought into the community that would definitely affect their lives. DeForest area school district parents can't speak if they live in Windsor or Vienna. These are just a few examples. We're a combined community of over 20,000 residents, and this proposed change would allow the board to shut out over half of those community members. If something like this affects my friends, my Windsor friends, and she wants to speak to the board, I feel it should be her right to do so. In fact, it's my understanding that DeForest board members themselves have gone to Windsor board meetings and have to speak, and they have been welcomed with open arms. In one statement, I hear board members say they want us to be a combined community. And in the next, they want to silence anyone who doesn't fall into these specific buckets. Passing this bill would widen the divide between Windsor and DeForest, and I don't think we want that. I think we want a more unified front. Thank you.
Thank you, Vicki. Alicia Williams?
Hi, guys. My name is Alicia Williams. I live at 4958 Innovation Drive, apartment 311. And I'm here to talk about the public speaking policy. When I first moved to DeForest several years ago, I actually didn't live, when I first moved to Wisconsin, I didn't live in DeForest. My ex-husband had gotten a job up here managing a credit union, and I lived in, and I wasn't aware really where he was building a house. So I lived in Madison, and my children went to school here in DeForest, and under this rule, I wouldn't have had a voice to speak. I stand before you to express my deep concern regarding the proposal policy to limit public participation in the village board meeting to only registered voters and property owners. This proposal is alarmingly reminiscent of the Jim Crow era, a period when laws were enacted to disenfranchise and marginalize segments of the population. Sorry, I had a lot of Red Bull, you guys, I'm really tired. Particularly African Americans. These laws enforced racial segregation and suppressed voices through measures like literacy tests and property ownership requirements. So I'm calling this rule the Bill Crow rule. While I'm grateful to not have lived during that oppressive time, my parents did, and they bore witness to the profound injustices it inflicted. The essence of democracy is the inclusion of all voices, regardless of socioeconomic status or property ownership. Implementing a policy that restricts public commentary based on such criteria undermines the very principles of equality and representation that we as a board and as a society have strived to uphold. So I urge the board to reconsider this proposal. And again, like I said, I will name this the Bill Crow proposal. And moreover, this policy would inadvertently exclude the youngest members of our society, our youth, and in regards to our neighbors. Engaging youth in public and civic matters is crucial as they are the future stakeholders of our community. And I just want to leave with an example. They offer, my oldest son recently returned from kayaking with his friends and mentioned that he had encountered trustee Bill Landgraf on the trail. He was kayaking. He said, "Mom, I like Bill. He's a nice guy. He cares about kids and making fun things for kids in our community." This interaction reminded me that excluding the voices of our youth means missing out on their fair and insightful perspectives. Children and teenagers can offer a balanced and thoughtful viewpoints that deserve to be heard as well. While I've referenced these restrictive policies as reminiscent of Jim Crow, it's important to recognize that not all interactions between community members and leaders are adversarial, like my son's. And so I think just moving forward, we should focus on bringing the community together, focusing on an environment of inclusivity and being good neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you, Alicia.
Welcome.
Abby Lowry.
Hi, Abby Lowry, 609 Greenfield Drive, DeForest. I am speaking today in opposition to the proposal to limit speakers at village board meetings to only Village of DeForest registered voters or property owners. And I also want to add that I pretty much agree with everything that previous speakers on this topic have said. So in terms of me, there are 5 main reasons why I'm opposed to this. One, just the wording, quote, Village of DeForest registered voters or property owners. Using this policy sounds very exclusionary. Reminds me of the Jim Crow era when the name of the game was to restrict voting to white male landowners. 2, DeForest gets a lot of people move into our community every year. If they just moved here and haven't gotten a chance to update their voter registration for their new address, they can't speak at a village board meeting, I guess, under this policy change. That seems silly as well as unwelcoming. When I was on the village board just a couple of years ago, I remember multiple times kids would come and speak about issues that were relevant to them. With this proposal, kids being civically engaged in this way seemingly would be now prohibited. That is very demoralizing and discouraging to kids. Also, if eligible voters are limited to Village of DeForest registered voters or property owners only, then the village board is also limiting itself in terms of access to sources of knowledge that exist outside of our community. One recent example would be with the fluoride debate of just a couple of months ago. There were numerous fluoride experts, including area dentists, who spoke regarding that issue. If this policy change is approved, these kinds of content field experts would no longer be allowed to speak and share their expertise. 5, there are a lot of people connected to DeForest who care about DeForest, work here, visit here, send their kids to school here, etc., but who do not live here. But with this policy change, they would no longer be welcome to speak at our meetings and give input on issues that deeply affect them. This includes the elephant in the room, Windsor residents. Do we really want to go back to the days of rivalry, animosity, and resentment that existed between Windsor and DeForest? I don't. I have attended and spoke at Windsor Village Board meetings at least 3 times in the last few years, and each time they treated me with respect and listened to what I had to say, which I really appreciated. The least we could do is return the favor and welcome their residents to speak at our meetings as well.
Thank you, Abby. Chris McDonald.
Good evening. My name is Chris McDonald. I live at 4000 Longfellow Court, DeForest, Wisconsin, mailing, Village of Windsor Municipality. I don't have a lot to add to what the previous speakers have said. I think this board is going to have a discussion on any limitations to public policy. I would just ask that we get a legal opinion on any discussions that we are going to implement. It sounds like there may be some questions on state statute. I think it's a terrible idea to limit public comment. We had some conversations in the past recently about potentially limiting public comment on online forums because it got a little spicy. But I think the legal opinion that we got was, the First Amendment exists to protect speech that's not popular, right? So I realize that every single person on this board makes decisions that impact my life, even though I live in the Village of Windsor. And I can't vote for any of you, but I've got 1,670 reasons why you should probably listen to Windsor residents. So bad decision. I don't support it. I think as you guys have this conversation during public comment, maybe ask yourself what our surrounding municipalities are doing. I talked to a trustee from the Village of Wanakee. I do think it's important for people to signify when they come to public comment, what's their name, what's their address if you so choose to collect that, and what's their municipality. Why are they speaking here? Why do Windsor residents want to come to the village board and talk about fluoride? Well, I have two girls. One goes to daycare during the day in the Village of Windsor. Another one goes to school in the Village of DeForest, and then they both go to after-school daycare in the town of Burke. So I do get to have a say. Your decisions do impact me and my family, and that's why I'm here. So I would just ask that, as you guys discuss this policy, I think about what Shannon said here. Think about why residents don't want to provide that information to this board when they come. And that's an indictment of this board and this body and some of the discussions that we have here. So I personally feel ashamed that people don't feel comfortable providing that information when they come to the board. I'm not scared to. 4000 Longfellow Court, stop by anytime. That's where I live. I think it's maybe appropriate to ask people to provide their full name, their address, if you so choose. Their municipality might be important, and that can be one thing that we ask Callie or whomever to collect when they come so that this board understands why they're here, why they're speaking on this topic. But terrible idea. I think all the speakers said it better than I could. So I hope as you guys have discussions, let's come up with a reasonable policy that serves the board, serves the Village of DeForest and the surrounding communities as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. John Schmidtnick again. Did you want to speak on this policy? Okay. Okay. All right. I got you once. I just had 2 sheets on you. All right, Callie, you had a number of registrations
I have,
and a statement from Bob Whipperford.
yes, just one. I have 14 forms of people have filled out that are opposed to the policy but chose not to speak on it. And I can mail those out to the board if you're interested in them. And I'm throwing things around over here. That's okay, I got you. That's what your job is. And then the comment that I have is from the Village of Windsor President, Bob Whipperford. And it is my understanding is that the DeForest Village Board meeting tonight, you will be considering action to only let DeForest residents and property owners speak at your village board meeting. On behalf of the Village of Windsor, I would like for you to consider that there may be negative or unintended consequences to this potential action. As DeForest and Windsor continue to work together, this could limit our ability to communicate with one another. Governments are supposed to be transparent in limiting which people can speak before the government.
Time's up.
And that's
Right, and this will be in your packet, so you all.
correct. I will email this out with the rest of the documents.
Thank you. All right. Did I miss anyone? Okay, and was there anyone online who wish to speak? Can we see the online people? Thank you. All right, is there anyone, if so, raise your hand, the hand that goes with the system. If not, I thank everybody, and we will move on with our agenda. Okay. Item 7.1 is not happening tonight, so we will have that at the next meeting. And we will move to 7.2, presentation for Tischler Bice, Inc. regarding a fiscal impact analysis study proposal. Alex?
Yeah, I'll give just a brief little intro, and then we have another agenda item not too far after this on this topic. And we do have a representative, Carson Bice from Tischler Bice, attending via Zoom. So we issued an RFP in February to seek a tool to seek a firm to put together a tool to help village staff better evaluate development proposals, land use decisions, and the impact of those decisions on the provision of services. And Tischler Bice is the firm that we've opted to move forward with, and we'll talk a little bit about that more in the next agenda item. But I will kick it over to Carson, who's online, to do a little presentation about their firm and give kind of an overview of their experience doing these kinds of analysis.
Okay.
Thank you, Alex. Good evening, Mayor. Am I supposed to upload this? It's asking me to upload to the cloud to share the presentation. Or do you guys already have it loaded there?
1 second, Carson.
We do have it here if you're okay with us advancing the slides.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, that's fine.
There we go.
Okay, perfect. Well, good evening. I'm Carson Bice, President of Tischler Bice. It's my pleasure to be here with you guys tonight. Let's go to the first slide. Next slide. I think we missed one. Go to slide 2. Okay. Yeah, so a little bit about us. We're based in Bethesda, Maryland, and Boise, Idaho, and we have a unique practice that focuses on cost of growth issues, primarily fiscal and economic impact analysis. And we've done more of that type of work than anybody in the country. And we've also done more impact fee and infrastructure financing strategies than any firm in the country as well. And we have done a few projects in the state of Wisconsin. The most recent would have been Sun Prairie, which I worked on. Next slide. Now, in terms of project overview, the village wants a model for the use in evaluating fiscal impacts of several things. Among those, specific development projects, use in evaluating annexations, rezoning proposals, as well as comprehensive plan amendments, with the goal of augmenting public policy and future land use planning decisions with fiscal information. And that's an important consideration because in our experience nationally, I would guess that probably over 90% of the jurisdictions in the country don't have a fiscal sustainability component as part of their land use planning process. And so I would ask the question, how do you know if your plan is fiscally sustainable if you're not requesting this type of information? And the other thing that we've noticed around the country is most of the fiscal analyses that are prepared in this country are prepared by the development community. And so it's no surprise that the analysis usually generates surpluses. So very few jurisdictions actually prepare their own fiscal evaluations in-house. And so it's sort of a feather in the village's cap that they're moving in this direction. Next slide, please. So the project approach, when we develop a fiscal impact analysis, we're using current levels of service as reflected in your current adopted budget. So we're not asking new development to correct existing deficiencies or increase levels of service. And in order to define these levels of service, we are doing departmental interviews and analyzing data that we collect from the city. And then we define these levels of service, not only from an operating perspective, but also through evaluation of the CIP and your existing infrastructure systems and looking at where you have available capacity or a lack of capacity. We do model your current revenue structure. We look at your sources and distribution formulas. We also define land use place types. So we look at the characteristics of new development in terms of household size, employment, vehicle trips, taxable value, et cetera. And we try to do this geographically because we don't want to treat all land uses, homogenously through the city. So for instance, in some parts of the village, you may have, retail development that's more of a automobile dependent scale, community scale retail that can have different employment density factors. It can have different vehicle trip factors than what we see in sort of the more downtown type of retail. So we want to be able to get very specific with the different land use place types that you have within the village. And then finally, we developed the model. So we look at fiscal results over time. So we're just not looking at the cumulative results. So you can look at what is the impact of timing or phasing specific development projects. How does that influence the fiscal results? So it's important for the village to know that, it may be 3 or 4 years before a specific project starts to break even. And so knowing that, that's a valuable information that you could have in sort of the negotiation process with a proposed development. Next slide. So what is the fiscal impact analysis? This graphic here sort of outlines it. We do define it as the cash flow to the public sector, which is very different than an economic impact analysis, which is the cash flow to the private sector. And so, as I mentioned, we develop these land use profiles or place types. We have different scenarios. The model is driven by your base year demographics, which includes the things I mentioned: population, jobs, vehicle miles of travel, other types of factors. And then we model all of your tax supported funds, looking at your operating revenues, your capital revenues, operating costs, capital costs, and we then get our bottom line. Next slide, please. So it's very different than the economic impact. As I mentioned, the economic impact is the cash flow to the private sector. And so the reason I bring this up is I've been in many meetings around the country where I've seen, particularly the development community, pass off economic impacts as fiscal impacts, and they'll talk about sales tax generation and income and construction phase spending, et cetera. And all of those are important, right? But depending on the state, each state has different revenue structures. And so not all of that revenue may trickle down and have direct benefit to the jurisdiction's budget. So for instance, if a jurisdiction doesn't have sales tax by point of sale, it really doesn't matter what the retail sales are in your community because it's not trickling down to you, right? And the other thing is that a lot of times the economic impact doesn't follow jurisdictional lines. A lot of times, projects have regional significance or sometimes statewide benefits. And so, from an economic perspective, the residential impacts are usually construction and consumer spending. And from a non-residential perspective, it's job creation and disposable income. And then you have not only the one-time economic impacts, but the ongoing impacts. And so we just need to be cognizant of the difference between economic and fiscal and how it affects the village of DeForest. Next slide, please. So another thing I think we should talk about is, some of you may be wondering, well, what is this firm going to be doing that's different than our own budget and finance folks do here in the village? And there's two main differences. One is municipal budgeting is primarily revenue driven. So you're looking at past revenue trends, looking at state distribution formulas in order to estimate what your revenue is going to be for the next fiscal year. And that determines how much you can spend. So it's really a a revenue constrained operation. Whereas a fiscal impact is just the opposite. So we're going to look at or forecast what are the expenses needed to maintain current levels of service. And that's a huge leap because most jurisdictions we work with around the country are not maintaining current levels of service across the board. And then we're going to look at, well, is the revenue then enough to offset those expenditures? And if not, we're going to have a negative result, and we have to look at ways to ameliorate any deficits. Next slide, please. So the use of the fiscal tool, one of the things we're big proponents of is looking at multiple scenarios. So for instance, most times when a development project comes in, the developer has a very optimistic absorption schedule. And so, it behooves the village to look at multiple scenarios in terms of, for instance, the phasing or timing of development. How about, if it doesn't have a 5-year absorption and it has a 7 or 8 year absorption, it allows you to test or do sensitivity analysis in terms of, what happens if the property values are more or less in terms of the assessed value. You can test, factors such as, the timing of development, the type of land use. For instance, after the Great Recession, a lot of developers were coming back in and asking to reopen master plans because the retail market wasn't there, and they were asking to change those proposals to multifamily uses. And so, one of the things you may want to do is, well, we think the retail part is optimistic. What happens if the mix of uses is different? And so these multiple scenarios allows the village to do what we call sort of what if alternatives, right? And that helps inform land use decisions. Also lets you test and compare potential financial incentives in terms of whether you're asked to do tax increment finance districts or offer financial incentives to a particular economic development proposal. It also provides information that allows you to plan for short and long-term operational and capital improvement impacts. And overall, it helps you, meet village planning goals that may be, as part of your land use plan and other strategic plans that you may have. Next slide, please. So the design of the tool, we design it in Excel and augment it with a Visual Basic interface. One of the reasons is you want to avoid, the accusation that it's a black box. And so in Excel, the village staff will be able to trace all of the formulas, all the assumptions are easily seen and manipulated and changed, et cetera. And so this combination of Excel and Visual Basic allows for a very powerful and flexible application as the village staff grows in competence with the tool. A lot of times additional modules may be requested, like for instance, how do we, what if we wanted to have a module that analyzes the impacts to the school district? So that can be very easily added to this type of application. Next slide. So the process is very straightforward. There's project initiation and data acquisition with staff. That will consist of usually 2 rounds of interviews with major departments within the village. We develop those model parameters in terms of, as I mentioned earlier, those land use prototypes or place types. Develop the model parameters in terms of, typically we would ask village staff to provide us with 1 or 2 past or recently submitted or currently being evaluated land use applications that we would develop the model around for testing. Those interviews result in the development of the level of service and the cost and revenue factors, which will be documented in the model's user documentation. We then design the model from scratch based on our interviews with village staff, and then we would go into the implementation phase where we train village staff on the use of the model. Next slide. And that concludes the presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone may have.
Before we have questions, Alex, do you want to augment anything?
No, I think that was a pretty comprehensive presentation. I'll save my piece for the agenda item later.
Okay. Questions? Bill?
Yeah, Carson, I
Yes.
agree with you on the sales tax, different states, different methods. As an example, Florida,
Right.
they would put a large scale development, I won't name it, on an interstate interchange, and that locality will be able to collect or impose, say, a 1.5% sales tax surcharge. We can't do that in Wisconsin. We're at the mercy of the state legislators to shell out our revenue. And that's got to be difficult because you don't know from one year to the next what it's going to be. Where down in Florida, they have that steady stream and they can budget that way.
Mhm.
What's important in the study you guys are thinking of doing for us, the data and where it comes from. You mentioned developers have data. Hopefully you're more independent and reach out differently.
Yes, sir.
Major trends that have gone on for years and years have been blasted out of the water in the past 5 years. Number one, retail. Office space has collapsed. Are we going to use data from 10 years ago, or is it going to be the new order of things? 5 years is such a short time. Whereas, say, before you had 40 years of retail data that changed over time, but you can't go by that, but we have such a short time now for data. Will it be accurate?
Yeah, good question. So no, we're really not looking 10 years in the past. We are using the most relevant and current factors for things like, household sizes from the ACS data from the census, the most recent employment density and vehicle trip factors from Institute of Transportation Engineers, also known as ITE. We'll be using current property values. Once we get into the city or the village's costs and revenues, we'll be trying to develop, current factors. We also, have access to, CoStar, which is, tracking non-residential activity around the country. And so we have that kind of data to augment the model with as well. So the model is not based on 10-year trends, so to speak. And there are all through the model, there are opportunities for you to change assumptions. And we sort of color code the model for so everybody knows what the user inputs are versus the formulas that are, calculating what the costs and revenues are. And like I said, there are opportunities throughout the model to play these what if games so you can test the sensitivity of making certain assumptions.
Thank you.
Jim?
Thank you for the presentation. I guess I don't know who it's a question for, but I just sort of wonder, what is the purpose or what are we hoping to gain? Is this more or less to figure out like impacts to different developments, or is it more or less to steer our comprehensive planning?
Well, from my perspective, it's multiple, and both of those could potentially be on play. So evaluating specific development projects when they come in and the impact that those may have on our provision of services in various regards. Obviously we've talked about impact fees in the past, relatively recently, those types of things, as well as when this board is considering financial incentives, which I believe Carson kind of touched on as well. But definitely the future land use decisions also, I think, is important to keep in mind, to bring that component to how we plan for the future as well. And then we've also talked about for annexations and things of that nature as well. And then I know Bill will probably chime in here too, but there's a staffing component to this and just understanding how these affect administrative costs too.
Bill?
Yeah, so I see this as another tool, right? This should not be say all and all, in making a decision based off, you know, a development type or specific development. It provides us a long-term and financial or fiscal analysis of what the potential impact of, say, a development may be. It may be a new community center. It may be the ending of a tax increment district. And how does that flow into our methodology and how we finance? And so I think for us, as administrators, managers, you know, it's another tool in that toolkit. Now, once this tool is developed, you know, the ability to manipulate it as we see fit, and then also assess that across, you know, the comprehensive plan. What, you know, something that makes sense in our comprehensive or growth plan may not make the most fiscal sense, and it doesn't necessarily have to correlate, you know, one to one. It's again, how do we start to accomplish these things? What does it mean fiscally? How does it impact both externally and internally our operations? And as we grow physically, what, you know, what maneuvers do we have in dealing with staff and dealing with facilities, et cetera? And so again, this helps us bring that picture, make more clear, that overall.
Jim.
And I guess that's good to know. So sort of more of a follow-up is like, I went through like the FUTA process through future urban planning or whatever with CARPC back in the days. And to me, some of the stuff, at least maybe the forefront of it, it seems like a lot of reproduction of that. I wonder if we've reached out to Dane County and see if they can help us, say with some of the data, their initial thing. And I do remember, at least I don't remember a part, say, talking about fiscally when we're doing FUTA. So that's where I'm hoping what I'm hearing is that this is that tool that was lacking in the FUTA process. And the other thing that I want to bring up sort of was again, I think they called it geographic services area. And what I want to bring up, and I know I've brought it up to you in conversations, Bill, where I think if you look at the village of DeForest, we can now see, this is my view, I suppose, but I think we can now see our borders as we're surrounded by Windsor on whatever, 2 or 3 sides. That line won't move. And even outside of any agreements that might come with, say, Westport and Vienna, there's limitations in my view, the engineering. So I think we have our ultimate growth out there. I think it's, you mentioned in your fiscal impact tool, looking at a 20-year. So I don't think we're going to reach that limitation in 20 years. So I'm not too concerned about, say, this geographic service area. I guess, I don't know, Bill, it looks like you maybe want to speak to that.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly what this tool can help with. You know, when you look about, you talk about future growth, you know, as the farther away you get from the village core, the more it may cost to extend services, to run services all the way out there. Is that money and investment better off for the village to invest in redevelopment on the village core? Is it more density? Is it less density? You know, those are the types of land use questions that we can start to address with a fiscal analysis tool.
Yep, and I think it's more, well, I guess 2 other things. I think that is a great tool for that because one thing that we're all concerned about is affordable housing. And that will help us maybe cite the affordable housing parts of our village and things. But with that being said, if we're coming up with fiscal impacts, I just want to be conscious of that. I don't want to be using this tool to assess developers that maybe are going to be trying to do affordable housing. I think it's important, and hopefully everybody takes this into account, that whatever our tax is supposed to do too. And the last thing that I wanted to question is, I think I can do it under this presentation, but looking at the proposal, say we're gonna be talking about the agreement, I want to say was like, say, 39,000 or something like that. And then looking at it as far as contracting goes, I think it was a fixed fee. And the hourly rates, in my opinion, were quite substantial. And I'm just curious if it's a fixed fee not to exceed, or if it's a fixed fee and maybe it's a question for Carson, how often do these contracts go over the fixed fee if it's a fixed fee not to exceed?
So I can let Carson speak to that after this, but this is, in my interpretation, this is a fixed fee.
Yeah, yes, sir. It is a fixed fee. I mean, there will not be any change order unless the village asks us to do something that's not in our scope of work.
Then I would just
That's
add, 'cause
very rare that happens. So
it's been brought up twice here about the data piece and not duplicating data that's already out there. And Carson can maybe touch on this too. A lot of the data is coming from us internally in terms of level of service and those types of things. So they'll be setting up a lot of interviews with staff, picking some of that from us.
Yep, and I think that's just important as far as setting the schedule. I would rather hold off on creating the model and make sure that all the data is secured or done right before Carson and his team starts doing the modeling. So.
Okay, we're going to move to someone else now. Rebecca?
Thank you for that last question, because that was touching on part of what I was going to be asking about. Following up on what he was just asking about in terms of the contract and the fee and stuff like that. I'm a little confused in terms of, is this like a one-time thing, or is this an ongoing tool that we'll have at our disposal down the road, or exactly what is? Because that was confusing when I was reading through everything.
So it's a one-time activity. And then the tool itself, there's a licensing agreement that you all will review. And that item, that enables us to have ongoing use of this. So there won't be additional fees associated with that.
Okay, so then that initial or that one-time fee, and then we can use it because we'll learn how to use it, I'm assuming. During that time, about how long do you think this is going to, what time frame are we looking at for this?
To create the model or to use the model?
To create and do what he's talking about.
Carson, did you have a sense on schedule? I think it was 6 months is what we put out.
yeah, it's usually 5 to 6 months. I'm actually looking here at our proposal. It is, a start date. We assume we start
I'm pretty sure 6 months
but it'll
is
be
in the
April.
contract.
Yeah, so originally it was March to June, so we're probably talking March to late June, early July.
So during that time frame, then it's being built.
Yeah.
You guys are learning how to use it, how to input data. And then after they're out of the picture, we're still using it down the road because it sounds like a really very useful tool if we learn how to use it properly.
Yeah, the intention is to learn how to use the tool and have the tool be ours to utilize until there's a fundamental change in the SAFE formula, or if we want to expand that knowledge to something beyond just the village. And so it's our intention for what the scope that we want to utilize the tool for, that we should be able to continue to use it after it's created.
Yeah, because it sounds like it's going to answer a lot of the questions that we keep asking you during some of these different negotiations. How is this going to impact us fiscally? And it sounds like this is going to answer those questions. So thank you.
Carson, I know we've kind of mentioned it back and forth in other conversations. Can you talk about how some of your existing clients, they'll kind of reach out to you after the tool's built for updates?
Yeah. So I guess there's two things. One is, some clients enter into sort of an annual maintenance thing where we update the model for them annually because we can do it so much, quicker. And, it only takes us, that's not a lot of money because we can do it fairly quickly, particularly something like the village, because you're fairly small in terms of the budget. But also, we're always available for help, quick questions, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, I told staff, like I've got a longtime client I've been working with for 20 years, Chesapeake, Virginia. And sometimes they get some very controversial, big development that come through the door, and they just ask me to, they'll send me a version of the model to look over, to make sure that they've done everything correctly and there's nothing that stands out. And I'm happy to do that. It doesn't take me very long at all. When you develop this yourself, you can go through this fairly quick and know where it's pretty obvious when there's something amiss.
Okay, thank you.
So we're happy to provide that.
All right. Anybody else who hasn't had a chance to ask questions yet? If not, we will move on. Thank you.
Thanks, Carson. Hope the surgery went well.
Yeah,
Thank you,
I'm in a little pain. So, well, thanks, guys.
Okay. I'd like to move to suspend the rules and move item 9.7 before, I guess, 9.2 now.
Okay. Second. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We'll now move to item 9.7, discussion and possible action regarding public comment policy that was raised by Bill. So I would ask Bill to tell us what he is seeing this will accomplish.
I'll make a motion to approve with a change to paragraph 1, where it says exceptions to allow underage residents of DeForest or non-residents are subject to a majority vote of the governing board. I would like it to read exceptions to allow non-residents to speak are subject to a majority vote of the governing board with the underage residents removed. I can give that to Kelly. That'll make it easier. With that change.
I would second that, but I would second it with a caveat, a friendly kind of thing. Wherever it says Village of DeForest registered voter or property owner, if Trustee Landgraf is agreeable to this, I would like it to say any Village of DeForest property owner or person who resides within the boundaries of the Village of DeForest.
I would agree to that.
We have a motion and a second. However, there's lots of questions. So let's first start with Bill. What are you trying to accomplish with this?
I'm trying to accomplish what a lot of communities have. Even our local school board has it, where the speakers are only allowed to be residents of the school district. We attended another board member and our administrator attended a Robert's Rules presentation, where it was brought up that some communities do not even allow public participation. And it was brought up that some communities restrict public participation to just residents of that village.
You know, I grew up with a saying from my mother frequently because I try everything, and it's just because your friends jump off the Wisconsin River Bridge, is that a reason for you to do it, Jane? And so I find it hard to accept the reason for us to do this is because other communities do it, when we have spent 2 to 3 years trying to tell people how transparent and inclusive we want to be and how we want to hear from residents. So there must be another good reason. Rebecca.
You know, I was thinking about this ever since I saw it get on the agenda. And first, it's my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, that this would only affect the village board. It doesn't affect the committees and stuff like that. Is my understanding correct?
It would be any village board. The fire board is exempt because it's a joint board. The library board
Be exempt.
would be exempt.
The community center.
The
would be
community
exempt.
center, anything with a joint,
Okay. So things like our P and Z and stuff like that, that would be affected by this. Then, okay, I just wanted to make sure that I was clear on that. So my personal feeling on this, and this is my personal feeling, is I represent the residents of DeForest. I don't represent the residents of Windsor, Vienna, or any place else. Are there times where we might want to have their input? Yeah, I think there are, and I think we can make that exception from time to time. But we've had a number of instances over the past year or two where our village board discussions about village business has been kind of hijacked by people outside of our community. And the people inside of our village, their voices were squashed. And I heard from a lot of residents about that. And that shouldn't be. We should be listening to our village residents. And I think very strongly on that one. With that in mind, I support it with these changes because I don't think we need to be suppressing the voice of the people within our village. I think all of the people inside of our village need to be free to come before us and talk. But except in situations where there is like a joint reason, a reason why we should be getting input from another village, we should be listening to our people.
All right, first Bill Chang, and then we have Jan, and then Tashidra.
Yeah, so a couple of things here. When the changes to the policy were introduced, it was introduced on Thursday, I believe, late Thursday. And so staff and, our legal representative here didn't have an opportunity to review the changes before I got into the packet. We have had the opportunity since to take a look at that. So a couple of comments here before, and again, I'll release it back to the board to have the discussion. So a little bit of background and history. Just want to remind everyone of how this policy came about. It was about actually 2 years to the date here. And we spent quite a bit of time at that time discussing what the policy was. And at that time, it was brought again by trustees at that time. There was a legal memo at that time explaining about, a limited forum or open forum, and then reading, comments as part of that and what we can and what we can't do. That was from, I believe, the last meeting in March of 2023. And at that time, the official policy was to be so that it would provide a consistent and equitable policy for all parties, minimizes confusion and understanding on part of the public as well as trustees. So that it was why it was brought forth and a lot of time invested in that. Since that time, we've adopted the core values, which you've heard already this evening. We've also adopted a strategic plan with strategic objectives. And we, in our strategic plan, we specifically address involvement or local government involvement, as we saw that the lack of government involvement was a threat specifically to the village of DeForest. We lack people wanting to serve on our boards, committees, et cetera. We've seen it in our elections where I think the last 3 elections we've had write-ins. And so that continues to be a threat to the community, not necessarily just that we generally don't have bodies to fill the position quite literally, but we don't have the diversity of thought, the diversity of commenting, et cetera. So therefore, The three objectives that relate to that, and I'll list them here, I'll read them here. DeForest local government is a civil institution where all can be heard and respected. And that was the highest ranked from the board and the staff at the time. Number two here is information sharing is positive, locally focused, and works to reduce bias polarization. And three, which is the second highest board staff ranked, is that community members see clear avenues to participate in their local government and are excited to do so. So with that in mind, as you consider the discussion on the language in particular to this policy, do consider the core values and the strategic plan that again was an effort of the board, the staff, and the community at the time.
Okay, she's passing her time to you. Go ahead.
Thank you, Bill. I wasn't here in March of 23. I had family stuff, so I wasn't privy to that conversation. But I do hear all the comments that was said earlier. And I just want to say a couple of things about this document in its entirety. I think that there's a lot of things that are capricious and egregious about it as it pertains to our community and what we've been trying to do for the last couple years. I think as we look at the history between Windsor and DeForest and just how volatile it has been and the things that we have missed out on as a joint community, I just think every time I hear the word epic, I cringe. And just the different things that we could do as a combined community to foster growth, development, and mental health and wellness between the two municipalities and just shine bright for all of Sun Prairie and Madison to see just makes me just want to just pause. I think about what we have seen in the last year in our community, and that just makes my heart ache as to what our kids have watched, whether it's fluoride or no fluoride, whether it's mountain biking or no mountain biking. Overall, and I just say I work on a mental health unit, and people's mental health is suffering tremendously. And I think the topics that we have been discussing lately, if you take a step back and look at our world in its entirety, they are minuscule compared to what we're going through holistically as a community, as a state, as a country, and as a world. And so, not to stand on a soapbox and go off on a tangent, but I really want us all to think about that. People are dying left and right. If you don't wake up tomorrow, what would any of these topics matter? Think about that. If you couldn't breathe, if you couldn't walk, if you couldn't do any of these things, what would any of this matter? Just pause and think about that. And so what I really want us to think about, because COVID hit us hard, we have changed how we do our meetings. These meetings are now videotaped, they're publicized, and they're permanent. And so while we require people to give their address, we need to pause and say, do they really need to verbalize that on camera and have it a public record forever? Can we have them put it on paper and leave it for us to submit and make it part of the record? Some people don't feel safe. I run a nonprofit working with women who aren't safe all the time. And we are putting things that are very private for the world to see. And there are some really nasty people out there that do nasty things all the time when they are not healthy, and even when they are. So I think we should look at this document in its entirety, pause, take a breather, and figure out, do we even need all those words to be civil with each other? If you have something to say, come to the meeting and say it with respect, cordially, respectfully. Do what you need to do and go home and live your life, because you only have one life to live and you should be living it, not destroying one another and taking people's oxygen, okay? And my other point is consistency is important. And what we require one person, we should require them all. So if one person has to give their address, everybody should have to give their address. We should not require it of one person and not the other just because they say they're uncomfortable. Because some people don't have that voice to say, I don't feel comfortable. And they may do it because they feel pressured. I don't succumb to peer pressure. I never have. But sometimes when you get in front of that mic and you have all these eyes staring at you, you do it because you feel like you have to. And that's not fair. To have someone say their address and then have somebody else get up there and not say their address. And then that person walks out feeling defeated, bullied, and trashed. And now we've just created another situation in our community. So I think we need to think about consistency, transparency, and equity and fairness in our meetings. The other thing that I want to say is we as a board need to think about how we're behaving. We cannot and should not require our community to behave and be cordial and be respectful and be loving and be kind and be gracious and all the things if we're sitting up here being disrespectful and ridiculous and out of control. We have to model it. We have to lead by example or we shouldn't be leading at all. So I'm gonna get off my soapbox because clearly I work on a psych unit and I have to hold all this in because these people are sick and they need my help, but we're technically not sick. So we need to get it together. Our children are watching. I say that at every meeting and they really are. They really are. If you go to our schools, you go to Eagle Point, you go to Yahara, you go to Harvest, you go to that doggone high school, they are behaving how we're behaving. And then we reprimand them, we suspend them, we call the police department on them, and they look at us and say, well, why do you get to behave that way and I don't? So if we want our children to behave accordingly, we should behave accordingly. The end.
Thank you, Tashidra. Jan.
First, can I ask Judd a question? Because I wanted to clarify something. Sorry, Judd. Is it true that DeForest does supply water to some Windsor residents? Example, Holland Fields.
No, Windsor does serve some of our residents with water. We do not serve any residents of the village of Windsor. So our water supply is within the confines of our municipality. The only area, like I said, that Windsor supplies is down Peterson Crossing, like Diamond Village, Timothy Court, that area, and Churchill condos. Is that so? Those are the ones that Windsor serves because we don't have the water pressure to get up the hill. But we do not serve any Windsor properties at all.
Thank you so much for clarifying that because I've started to question, is that fact? Because I keep hearing it from everybody, but I didn't think it was. So I appreciate that. But anyways, going back to what we're really talking about, and this kind of comes into my head with what you just said. I do want to say that I signed the agenda item because I feel this situation warrants discussion. I think I am coming more from a standpoint, though, I'm looking for more efficient meetings. And there have been times that I have felt that we have been a little hijacked. And I'm going back to days of like 2012 snowmobiles in Western Green Park when the town of Arlington was here because they wanted to go down Western Green Park to get to the landmark and to the bowling alley and whatever else. So, you know, I've got that big picture in my head, right? Of, oh, sometimes we feel that some of these things have been a little hijacked and it's just an efficiency thing. And I was thinking, you know, years ago, we didn't have the ability to do emails and we didn't have Engage on DeForest. So I'm thinking, it's not me as a board member that doesn't want to hear from everyone. I still want to hear from people. Of course, I'm taking residents as number one when I'm trying to make my decisions, but I do try to look beyond that to the bigger, fuller community, including Windsor and Vienna and so forth. So one of the things is I appreciate everyone coming to talk tonight because you brought up some valid points that I wasn't thinking about, and I appreciate that. It's kind of makes me look at the bigger picture. You know, when it was said that, what about the employees working for these companies and, you know, driving down the roads and so forth? I mean, that does make sense. And then there's the other item too, and this has come to mind, is how is this going to affect our village staff, right? Like you guys having to verify like who lives where and that sort of thing would be pretty difficult, especially doing it during a meeting, and is there time, and you know, how is that going to come into play? So I'm wondering if, you know, going forward, we can maybe tweak some things. I'm not saying that what we have in front of us tonight is it, but have maybe village staff put together like a thoughtful plan of maybe how we could just have people say what municipality they're from, or somehow put it on the form or so forth. I don't necessarily say that we need to, and I agree with Tashidra, there's a lot of reasons not to for people to cite their actual address. But if we could have their municipality and somehow have it in the record of, you know, they are knowing that they're a DeForest resident, but not just having it public, would be helpful. And I think that this also comes into play because it's kind of good timing, because I think, you know, the village is starting to talk about plans of the way we're running our meetings and efficiencies, and we're going to be looking more at our the Roberts rules. And so that is another reason why I was thinking that, okay, this might be the time to discuss this. But I know that we are all kind of on high emotions with the elections, and maybe this isn't good timing and that sort of thing. But like I said, I just want for us here, I want things more efficient. I want things more on subject. And that sort of thing. So I guess that's where I'm coming from. I'm still have an open mind, and that's all I got to say.
Okay, we have some more hands. Colleen and then Jim. I'm sorry.
I said, oh, what's her name? I don't have anything prepared ahead of time. I wish I had thought that far ahead, but I don't support this. I agree with what Tashidra was saying. You know, how many years have we listened to this stuff about DeForest and Windsor not getting along? Come on, people, jeez. After this last election go around and all the crap that went on social media, have been recently mentally upset, physically ill, embarrassed to say I'm even on the DeForest board. Clearly, we're not paying any attention to our core values or our strategic plan. That all went out the window by certain people. No, I will not stop people from talking in front of the village board. If you're from Windsor, that's fine with me.
Jim?
Thank you. And I'll say I echo some of the sentiments that Jan and other people have said, but I think it was worth the conversation, and I think there can be a lot of good out of these continued conversations, being that I'll mention this as a minor point, that I continue to see this, that we have 30 seconds as a time limit to read 50 words. And I don't know if I've ever seen the 50 words actually get finished in 30 seconds. So, I mean, I think that's one minor point, that maybe we up that to a minute or something or whatever, just so you can finish the words. But I do like the change that you recommended, Rebecca, as far as like, it's really everybody that lives in DeForest. If you're a child, if you're a renter, that is to me a given no matter what. That's your right. I would say the same for businesses. myself, and I'll go back in history 20+ years ago when I was church president and I spoke very openly that was all about our church was going through a pretty major upheaval at the time. And it was all about being an open policy. And that was a big thing that actually got us through that period. So that's something that I would like to have here. But then I say that and I think to myself, well, there wasn't people from outside congregations coming in to talk either. So that enters my mind as far as how to do that. I definitely want an exception that we can always open it up to people outside. I wouldn't vote for anything unless that was it. And I can tell you, whenever somebody comes in, I'm going to pretty much vote to open it up all the time. Like Jan, you mentioned like Arlington. I'd be more than willing to hear about the Arlington snowmobilers, why they'd want to come through Western Green, but it's all good information. I think the more information you have, the better, as far as making the better decisions. And Decidra, I heard you as far as like, and many people has spoken as like how you don't want to give your address. But I do think it's very important to know what municipality it is, because that does enter some of the trustees' minds of how to take your opinions, I'll say. So I think that being said, again, another reason to have this discussion, because I think we should probably even look at our form as far as like putting address. And I, again, think there should be a field right on the form, what municipality you're in. And talking again to Jan, we have so many like 3-hour meetings. I just want to have more efficiency. And you look at me like that when I'm just stealing the mic right now, right? And the last thing I'll say, it talks to the core values, but this is the one thing that I can think of where it maybe actually helps the core values as far as potentially limiting, is that we're not getting people participating in our local government because they look at our meetings and seeing 3 hours meetings and they see people talking and being pretty hostile at times. So that is maybe one reason, and I think that may be one of the only reasons I can think of where it might be good to limit it.
We're going to move to Bill and then I have some things.
So I know Al also wants to talk about, who you let in, who you don't let in, or who you let talk, who you don't let talk in regards to making a motion to allow it at that time versus just a general open forum. There's some legal and liability there. But there are different ways to say limit a forum, right? Instead of being exclusive, you can control things that happen in here, like a rule, like the quorum, right? What can potentially be said and what can't be said. That's not, discriminatory or, and so those are, I think, parameters that I would encourage this board to look at. What I like to hear, and then some of the stuff that I'm hearing now, efficiency, prioritization, that's great. If you can set the policy, let us get to work on drafting the language so that we can create a drafted or maybe even ordinance. And as we're talking about rules, order of business, something that's going to comply with your policy direction. It's also going to comply with our core values. It's also going to comply with our strategic plan. That's why we're here. That's why the staff is here. And again, we like the opportunity to do so.
And I support staff doing that and looking broadly. We talked through this about efficiency. Well, one of the things we can do is each board member only gets to ask one question and get the answer, and then you go to someone else. And you don't get to kiss the mic for, 10 or 15 questions. You don't get to talk slow and be pedantic. you don't get to follow people out and harangue them about what they've said. We need to start practicing what we're asking other people to do. And we need to, as a board, I think, continue to be inclusive. You know, when I got a call from Mr. Whipperforth about this, and he said, well, we have a joint community center. We have joint library services. We have a joint fire department. We have other joint services, although as he reminded me, they have to pay a higher fee. We have joint recreation programs. We do joint planning. Our water and sewer systems may not be totally connected, but they're, you know, they rely on one another for things. We work on planning with them. So, and then we have relationships with Burke, and we have relationships with Vienna, and we have relationships with other communities. We're working with Westport right now. So it strikes me as not very rational to take this approach without really looking at what is it we're trying to do and how do we really get there? And that's where I support what Bill Chang has suggested as an avenue. I also want us to start looking at how, as a board, we really want to use Robert's rules, because in the past, when we've tried to be strict with Robert's rules, people would say, well, that's not how we've always done it, and that's not what I really want to do. I just, you know, I keep saying, well, I can get my way if I do it this time. I mean, we've all gone through that. So we need to really think about how strict we want to do those policies and what has been past practices and what do our ordinances say, and not just take this kind of as a quick action in response to what's been happening on our board over the last few months, and think about what we want to be when we grow up and really start acting the way we want to act as a board and how we want to lead in our community. I agree with Tashidra. I am hearing, you know, there's been foul language online. There's been people who have indicated that they're scared. Kids see and hear that. I worry about that. I don't sleep over those sorts of things. So we need to get to a point where we're operating in a very different manner. And I encourage us to withdraw this motion, to let staff do their work, and to move forward on this matter in a more measured and smart approach. Thank you. Rebecca?
I've heard a couple people on the board here tonight who have talked about what has happened on social media, out in the community, whatnot, over the past month or so. I concur with that. I was one of those people who was experiencing some significant safety issues, safety concerns. Some people did some things that were highly inappropriate and accusing people on the board of doing things that they weren't doing. And I did my best to refrain from responding to that garbage. And I know there's someone sitting across from me looking at me like, yeah, right. But you weren't behind the keyboard. You weren't experiencing what I was experiencing. And I've had to take some steps. And nobody on this board, nobody out there should ever have to experience that. And I totally agree with what you were saying to Cedra. And nobody should have to ever experience that stuff. And I and none of you should ever have to experience another board member implying that you were the one that was at fault when you weren't. So I'm going to leave it to Bill to decide whether or not to withdraw or to continue or to lay it on the table and move forward. However he wants, I will support whichever one he wants to do. I think we do need to have some changes. I think we need to get some clarification in how we run our meetings so that they are more efficient, so that we feel safe, so that they feel safe. I agree with the thing about only saying the municipalities, but it needs to be their actual municipality and not, well, I live in DeForest because I have a DeForest address. No, I want their municipality, okay? Because it's important to me to first consider the residents of this village. They're the people I represent. And then I'm more than happy to hear from people outside of the village too, especially if it's something that might impact them in some way. But I'm going to leave it to him. I've said what I need to say.
Bill?
I agree. We need to not only this, but expand and improve the policy as we go on. It's a living document. It's a policy. I do not want us to be Surprise, Arizona versus Massey, where you have the First Amendment to speak, but it's our residents that have that right. I represent the residents of DeForest. And we can expand on this. We can change, Robert's rules isn't part of this. That's separate. We should be following Robert's rules all along. I learned a lot with our administrator and another trustee at the meetings that we're not following, but that's a separate issue. But I brought this forward to protect our residents that come forward, that aren't coming forward because they are being attacked or they feel that they can't speak. So I'd like it to, let's call the question.
Al?
Just a point of clarification, I've heard people talk about, local businesses being able to speak here. And I guess I want to point out under this policy, very few local businesses would be able to speak. The president of Little Potato Company couldn't come in and talk to the board. She's not a resident. She doesn't own any property. That would be true of almost every business because most of them are incorporated. So if you're going to vote on this policy, I just want to make sure you all know what you're voting on and make whatever adjustments you think are appropriate. I'm not recommending that you vote on it, but
okay. And I'm open to a friendly to allow businesses. I'm good with that.
I would second that too. Can I make a suggestion?
Make it anyway.
I'm going to make it anyway. How's that?
Wait, point of order. He called the question, so don't we have to vote? When you call the question, if we're gonna follow Robert's rules, when you call the question, you gotta vote.
That's a good point.
Sorry, good point of order, I guess. Yep. Isn't, when you call a question, do you have to vote on the item? Doesn't somebody have to actually accept the call of question?
No, you do not.
Oh, I thought you had to.
I don't know. I couldn't hear you, Jim.
calling the question is a motion to terminate debate, which requires a second and a 2/3 vote of the body.
I don't think anybody seconded.
On concluding the debate. So you have to do
I didn't
a vote on
second that.
concluding the debate. before you actually get to the question.
But there has to be a second to the motion.
And I did not second that.
You didn't.
No, I did not second the call to question.
I did, second.
Oh, okay.
What does let's go mean?
It means let's vote. We've been on this. Go.
She was at the meeting.
Well, we've all had training, Bill.
I think you want to clarify what exactly the question is at this point.
That's just where I was going. I have no idea what we think we're voting on.
Bill made a motion on this document right here. Rebecca seconded. He made a friendly to his motion to add whatever he added to include.
I have it all documented.
Yeah.
You want me to read the motion I have? A motion by Bill, seconded by Rebecca, to approve the policy with the change in paragraph 1 to state exceptions to allow non-residents to speak are subject to majority vote of the governing body. And also change the document to state any Village of DeForest property owner or person who resides within the boundaries of the Village of DeForest. Were the changes that were proposed.
I'm sorry.
First, the 2/3 on the.
And you vote on the calling of the question.
Right. So this vote is on calling the question. So all of those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed?
No.
So it sounds like the ayes have it. We will call the question or on the motion.
Roll call vote, please.
Trustee Simpson?
Nay.
Trustee Stefan Hagenhan?
No.
Trustee Witherspoon?
Yes.
Trustee Allen?
No.
Trustee Landgraf?
Aye.
Trustee Little?
No.
President Cahill Wolfgram?
No?
Motion fails 2-5.
Okay. So we will move on. Thank you. All right. We are back at item 9.2. Discussion and possible action regarding resolution 2025-037, resolution authorizing the village president and village clerk to execute an agreement for services and a licensing agreement with Tischler Bice, Inc.
Move to approve.
All right. Alex, do you want to?
Second.
Oh, I didn't hear. Did you?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Yeah, who was the second?
Shidra?
Can I have?
Sure. Jim?
So I'm a little bit, I want to bring up the question again where I asked if it was a fixed fee, because what I heard is you called it a fixed fee, but in my terminology, a fixed fee can keep running above the cap. Is that what you meant?
No, so this is a guaranteed max.
Okay, so in my terminology, it's a fixed fee with not to exceed. So it sounds like we're matching that way. Okay, thank you.
Does that, okay. All right. So we have a motion and a second. If there any further comment, Tashidra.
While the price point is pretty high, I don't like the price point, but I do like tools that allow you guys to be more efficient and to offer us information that will allow us to make decisions better and more effective. I mean, I like data, obviously, and I like being able to compare and contrast and know what we're getting into. And I do like the fact that, and I want you to reassure me of this, that that large price point will allow you to utilize this as much as you possibly can to get as much bang for your buck as we possibly can, if that makes sense, right? And so that's what I want to understand, because that's a big ticket. And I want to make sure that once we understand how to utilize this tool, we can, like a vehicle, run it into the ground, right? So can you just speak on that to just help me swallow that pill?
Yeah, so we did budget 40,000 for this project for this year. So we were anticipating, cost to come in at that. I will say that in conversations that I had, when initially putting this together and thinking about this, there's one firm that I knew did these things and did really well, and they wouldn't even look at it for this price. So there definitely are higher costs too. But yeah, I mean, ultimately, I can tell you that the folks on the staff who are going to use this tool are going to use it into the ground because there's a lot of data geeks on the staff side too. And ultimately, the hope is that this, I don't want to use the term pays for itself because I hate when people make that promise, but I do think this is going to allow us and you all to be more effective stewards of all of our public services, all of our infrastructure, all that type of thing. So I see this as an investment into managing all those costs, because we talked about in the context of, well, it's a redevelopment project versus a greenfield out on the perimeter. What is that going to be to extend infrastructure? But it's not just extending infrastructure, right? Some of this that's going to be built into the model is, what does it cost to maintain the infrastructure to go out to, future Vienna lands and stuff like that. So ultimately, I see this as a really nice price point to have some really downstream benefits.
Bill?
Since I seem to be the gatekeeper of the strategic plan, it is in there. Yeah. So it is, the two categories that are in our strat plan, addresses future growth desires and then impacts of external growth. Some type of study looking at cost of services, impact of services, and how much we can grow, smart growth. That's all represented in the strat plan. And so hopefully that makes you feel better.
Is this something that will help us also look at police and fire and I mean, that's been a huge issue for us, is how do we assess the impact of new facilities on those sorts of services, which are high ticket items in many ways.
Yep.
Okay, yes, Rebecca?
Yeah, I just had kind of piggybacking on what she was just asking in terms of that. So like when we have a TID district and we're offering TIF, is that going to help us be able to understand how what we're offering is also going to impact these types of services?
Yeah, 100%. I think to what Jim was saying in one of these, maybe the last discussion item, it's more pieces of information
Okay.
that you can bring into those decisions.
Yeah, because that's been one of my biggest concerns, as I'm sure you know, is about how, because I see TIF as a useful tool, but I also see it as being one of those tools that can maybe not be always the best choice. It depends on how it affects these other types of services. And so that's where one of my biggest concerns has always been.
If there's no other questions, we have a motion and a second, I believe. So I would ask all those in favor to signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Item 9.3, discussion and possible action regarding ordinance 2025-014, an ordinance to repeal and recreate the village's floodplain zoning regulations, Chapter 21, to incorporate updated flood insurance study, volume numbers, and technical changes. All right, before we get a motion on this, Brandy, do you want to give us an overview?
Sure. FEMA, not regularly, every so often updates their floodplain maps. Last time that was done, through village ordinance changes was back in 2016. We have to update our floodplain ordinance to include map numbers and things like that from the FEMA upgrades. And it's a requirement from them with a deadline, I believe it's April 17th. So we're kind of cutting it, to the chase. But we did a repeal and recreate because Al did work directly with Wisconsin DNR staff going through the ordinance, laying it out a little bit differently, adding some technical changes, things of that sort, and then also doing those required map amendments through there. So they have unofficially accepted the version of the ordinance that's before you tonight. What will happen is if you choose to go ahead and approve this ordinance tonight, then I submit everything to the DNR and then they'll submit it to FEMA for final approval on that end.
Okay. Sure.
I would just state that we have gone through this this revision a number of times, and there's been times where I've been rather upset at some of the changes and the maps and things like that. And really what ends up happening is that we're really more or less held hostage, because if you don't approve the changes, then you lose the insurance for all your residents. So there's, sorry to say, about nothing we can do. So I will make a motion to.
Glad you worded it that way.
Second.
Third.
We have a motion and a second.
And a third.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. I knew, Jim,
Thank you.
want to get behind this. I've heard you go off on floodplains before, so.
Way to be efficient.
Yeah. All right. 9.4, discussion and possible action regarding resolution 025-027, a resolution authorizing the village president and clerk to execute an infrastructure development agreement for Continental 784 Fund LLC, supporting construction of the springs at DeForest Residential Development. Is it Mark or is it Alex?
It's me. I told Judd I'd do my best Mark impression. So Mark did.
You're gonna have
provide-
to speak up a little though. You're real quiet tonight.
I know, and I can't hear it on my radar, so you have to tell me if I'm being soft, because I have no idea if I'm being soft, so.
You are being soft.
Okay. You can't say
You're
that to
not-
me twice, Jane. There you go. Thank you. So Mark did provide a memo for this item, which is the infrastructure development agreement, as well as the CSM, which is the next item. Ordinance requires a development agreement be in place governing the provision of public infrastructure. This development is the multifamily by Fleet Farm, which you've all seen a number of different times. They've gone through most of their approvals. These two are some of the remaining items. I'm happy to answer any questions about the development agreement itself, but these are fairly formulaic in terms of how we put them together. Obviously, they're tailored to each development itself. I know Jim's going to have questions, so I'll pause.
All right. Are there any questions or is there a motion?
I will also say that we have Katie Skelton from Continental in the room too.
I saw her back there.
Questions?
I'll make a motion to approve, and I do have one question after.
All
the
right.
second.
Do we have
A second.
we have a motion and a second. What is your question, Jim?
So the one question is about the phasing. I see there's a phase 1, 2, and 3. In the phase 2, I saw if at the full build out of phase 2, there's still only, I'll say technically one entrance in that's at least paved. You talked about having an emergency that's gravel. But I just want to make sure that that doesn't stay that way for a long period. I would suggest, and you tell me if it's already in there, that after phase 2, say we should limit maybe a year or two before we have to pave the Glencoe Drive. I mean, or are we just certain that phase 3 is going to come that fast?
So Katie can probably speak a little bit to phasing, but I'll just kind of high level talk about why we opted with this approach. It was essentially to allow them to move fast through the construction of this development. So it wasn't necessarily like, well, we'll do phase 1 and then in year 6 of this thing, we'll see what phase 2 and 3 happen. It was more so typically these development agreements require certain pieces of the public infrastructure to be done before they can move to going vertical with some of the buildings. And so with a phasing approach, we would then allow them to go vertical with some things if the public improvements reach a certain point in phase 1, rather than like if you say on the far northwest corner of this, the far southwest corner, before they could start going vertical on that building, they had to have all the infrastructure all the way to a completed point for throughout the entire thing. So it was more of a, to your point about is it ever going to take 3 years to do it, is more of a speeding up construction thing than anything.
And I guess I leave that up to Jane. Pass it to him.
Bill wanted to say something if that.
Yeah, although it's not a part of this agreement here, we do have a separate tax increment financing agreement that requires for them to construct Glencoe Drive before we issue any payment for that TIF.
Okay.
That's certain enough for me, so thank you.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Are we ready to vote? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
We should thank Katie for being patient.
Thank you. Thank you. 9.5, discussion and possible action regarding ordinance 2025-012, an ordinance approving a certified survey map dividing into 4 lots, 2 outlots, and public rights of way, the 45.1 acre parcel as specified west of Interstate 39, 90, 94 and north of Delmar Road. I think Alex, your mark again.
Yeah, so again, this was all in the memo there. I guess a clarification from my point, does Robert's rule mandate that you have to read the entire title no matter how long it is? Okay, all right, there you go. Just trying to save you some time. What's that? Right, that's it. The only thing that I'll note about this, I think Mark did a good job about putting this all together, is that this approval would have some contingency for the village engineer to perform a final review, just to make sure that all the comments were addressed. So there's an extra piece in there.
Okay. Yes, Jim.
I'll make a motion to approve, especially hearing that the engineer has to review, because I've got a couple things I could pass on to him.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. You're going to pass those on at another point?
Yeah, I'll submit it to the engineer for their consideration.
All right. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Motion carries. Item 9.6, discussion and possible action regarding resolution 2025-039, a resolution authorizing the village president and clerk to execute an infrastructure development agreement with Jean Street LLC supporting construction of a hotel development.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Bill?
Yeah, I have some concerns. Listen, Truck parking, that's gonna get tough. You're gonna have some 40 or 28-foot cattle trailers want to get in there. They're gonna park on Jean Street. Pets, there's no area for pets to do their business. Fire, I have real concerns with the fire trucks getting around, just looking at that conflagration, I should call it. And the one entrance has a lot of concern. One way in, one way out. It's a blizzard, there's a fire, trucks blocking the entrance. With this design, I'll be voting no in the future.
Just to be clear, what's up for discussion is the infrastructure development that governs the provision of this or connection of the sanitary sewer along
Right.
Highway V to connect to our system.
But unless those things, anything come forward, I'll be voting no. So I won't have to explain this every time.
Sure, gotcha. And also just for everybody's edification, our fire department, all our typical development review team have reviewed the site plan.
And spent quite a bit of time discussing those very items. Yes, Jim?
So I apologize, I wasn't able to make the P and Z meeting. Could you tell us where it is in the proposal? Has the site plan been approved or submitted or?
Yeah, it was approved at P and Z with conditions.
Okay.
I would just state the one concern that I have sort of almost in line with Bill is that there isn't a sidewalk connection.
To V or just?
I would say to V, and what I'm sort of standing on is like, say, there's Chris Evans' property, namely like the Burger King and was it Starbucks and Quick Trip? They all had to put in sidewalk when they built their site plan. So in my opinion, there should be sidewalk along V that should be put in with this hotel and a connection from the hotel to that street sidewalk.
Gotcha. Yeah, that wasn't brought up at any of the planning and zoning discussions. I can certainly suggest it to the developer and see how they might think about integrating something like that.
Right, it just might be something we end up having to do if that becomes a priority.
Sure.
What? Rebecca?
Yeah. Oh, sorry. From hot to nothing. With the location of where this is, I apologize, I don't know the property owners of the two buildings that are next to it, that kind of surround it. Is there any future, are you able to say whether or not there's any discussions about changes on those, on the other part of that area? And if so, would that potentially alleviate some of the concerns that, say, Trustee Landgraf brought up?
I'm not sure what you mean. Sorry.
Well, I'm trying to figure out, sorry, okay, yeah, I am kind of off topic a little bit, but it impacts this. I don't know if you can say anything on that or not.
So I'll talk to the.
Basically, just is there anything in the future that might alleviate some of the concern about?
I'm not sure that, sorry, I'm slow on the uptake here. I'm not sure that the public improvements associated with what I think you're talking about.
Yes.
That ended up happening would go that far.
Okay, thank you. That's all I needed, thank you.
Bill Chang?
I can talk to the general kind of overall planning for this entire area as it relates to Tax Increment District 9. New properties being added to the village. So all of the infrastructure along County Highway V does not stretch out to this parcel. What it does is it goes south on Hickory Lane. And so all of that, all of the public infrastructure, depending on what happens in the future with development, not just on this property, but north and south, will be a determining factor as to when and how we go about the reconstruction of these major street corridors. as you know, this Highway County V here, all across this section is unimproved. And so the question becomes, to what standard, would we require a per se sidewalk or a path? And I just don't think that our planning has advanced that far yet.
I also note we're talking about infrastructure here. And when we get to talk about the hotel, we'll get to talk about hotel taxes and the wonderful things they can do. So, all right. We have a motion and a second. So I would ask all those in favor to signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Motion carries. All right. 9.8. Consideration and discussion regarding a development agreement with Cobblestone Hotel Development LLC for a hospitality facility in a tax incremental district number 8. The village board may convene in closed session as authorized by Wisconsin statute 19.851E for the purpose of deliberating or negotiating the purchasing of public properties, the investing of public lands, or conducting other specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session. The village board may reconvene in open session and further discuss on the subject matter discussed in closed session. All right, so.
Okay, let's give this a try. Nope, can't do it yet.
Rebecca.
I think this question can be asked out here. Is this the same hotel basically that was being considered over by Penn Seekers?
Yeah, let me kind of give an introduction. I'll answer that question. So as the memo states, I think we've been after a hotel for quite some time here. I believe in 2021 in TID 8, there was some discussion about a Grand State Hotel in TID 8. It didn't happen. We've kept the hotel feasibility study up to date since that time. Updated in 2023 and 2024, there was a Cobblestone proposal in TID number 5. We, at that time, offered and approved, the village board approved, a development agreement with the parameters similar to the Grand State. That fell through. Cobblestone remained interested in the village of DeForest, but with with their model, they have a number of different investors all across the nation, all across the state. This one is the same Cobblestone chain line, but different investors. And so they are looking at not TID 5, TID 8. And I don't think that it's also the same location, exact location as the Grand State. It's down the road a bit more. But what we've done here is, we've carried through the incentive terms from the Grand State to the Cobblestone, first Cobblestone, now to this one. And those obligations from Cobblestone would be the acquisition of the property, of course, the zoning land entitlements with that, their required assessment value of $7.5 million by January 1st of 2027. Conditions of the approval or their obligation are continuing property and liability insurance, continued maintenance to maintain that property value. That at the current tax rate is about $125,000 annually in property tax revenue. Again, a common parameter is that we require payment in lieu of taxes if the property becomes exempt. And then that they also file or record a value covenant stating that they will maintain that value. So in exchange for that, we would be offering the issuance upon achieving those requirements in a pay-go bond. starting in 2027, but the first payment starting in 2028. Maximum amount of that bond is 1.1 million. And over 10 years, which is the life of the tax exempt district, comes out to about $110,000 each year with no interest. So those terms are acceptable to Cobblestone at this point. In the agreement, they do have the ability to assign it to their investor. We do have them set up to come into the next meeting to provide a presentation, as we've done more recently, before you approve it. At this point, if the terms are acceptable, there's no further action from you. If the terms are not acceptable and you want to further negotiate the terms, I'd recommend that you move into closed session at this point.
Rebecca?
Just one more question. So as I was reading through the memo, the previous location that we were considering for them was going to have a steakhouse. This one would not. Is that correct, or would they? Because that was a little confusing to me.
Yeah, so my understanding is that this one would not
Okay.
have a steakhouse. It would still be the same amount of rooms, 62 units. And then I also included a feasibility study, but we do have a pro forma that we had issued with this particular build. And so we do have that data. I don't have the tax data for you right now, but it's at 8%.
Thank you.
I see him. I just wanted to further answer your question. I'm not amused. We need to also remember, in looking at their other properties, that they generally have some sort of small restaurant involved in their properties, or food available for their residents. And, we may be able to work with them to suggest that we might like a restaurant added. So, Jim?
I'd say it's a little bit of my comment too, because I thank you, Rebecca, for catching that, because I didn't read that, but when I looked at the concept plan, it suggested that there was an outdoor patio, so I was sort of incorrectly assuming the steakhouse included that. And I'd say my comment, I think this is something we can talk about in the open session. I just wonder how sure they are of the concept. And I'm guessing there's still opportunities to change and stuff, because one idea I had is maybe flipping their concept so the patio would be more front forward and more visible to people. I thought that might be more attractive, but that's all I had to say.
Yeah, so currently the proposal and the agreement that's gonna eventually come for your approval at the next meeting is strictly on the TIF incentive, which historically we've based off of the required value. We're gonna dive into more incentive type. I think we should go in a closed session about that. And then this is a concept just in general to get it onto the property so that you can see generally where it is. They still have to go through the entitlement process.
Move to go into closed.
We have a motion to go into close. Second. There's a second. Roll call, please.
Trustee Stefan Hagenhan.
Aye.
Trustee Witherspoon.
Aye.
Trustee Allen.
Aye.
Trustee Landgraf.
Oh.
Trustee Little.
Aye.
Trustee Simpson.
Aye.
President Cahill Wolfgram.
Aye.
Motion carries 6-1.
All right, we're. All right, you're talking to yourselves. Are we ready?
Oh, yeah.
Thank you. We want to be efficient, you know. All right, guys, let's keep moving. Communications, check register is in your packet, committee, commission, and board
We're
I
not,
just didn't know if we
we're not
passed 9.8.
yeah, we're not asking for any action. What we'll do is we'll have a presentation from the developer at the next meeting, and then, this item will be up for you to vote on or to consider at the next meeting. That's all.
Ready? All right, we're gonna keep moving here. Committee, commission, and board reports were in your packet. My thumbs are split. Do you have anything from DCCVA you want to share? I didn't see anything in either the league or DCCVA. Other than I will mention that we are paying attention to the budget and our bills on TID and that is going through the legislature. So far, we've had a very favorable response from both sides of the aisle, so that's a good feeling. The only other thing I'd mention is last week I was able to be part of a tour of Quick Trips Distribution Center, and it's really coming along nicely, and it's going to be a wonderful facility. So I'm glad to see them. I mean, they've even got the structure up for the health clinic. So it's just really fun to see. All right. I don't have anything else. Is there any other business to come before the board? If not, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.